Hello. Oh, I tell you what, I was excited last week and I'm excited again now because this is our very first Sunday show. Yes, I can hear you already saying you've been on Sundays before, but those were debates. And we're going to set our stall out now, building up to the new series where we're going to have a proper magazine show full of everything. So welcome, everybody. Buckle in because you'll see new graphics tonight, not those tunnel ones. We've got a big panel and obviously we're here to celebrate Doctor Who. So welcome to our new Sense Sphere Sunday show full of fun, fact and the frivolous. A show full of passionate fans, panellists who love Doctor Who. You won't find us digging over the entrails of the chip wrapper news, the non-Doctor Who news. We are here to celebrate and enjoy our love of Doctor Who in all its iterations, shapes, eras and moments. Every Doctor is our Doctor. Every era is canon. I'm a passionate Middlesbrough supporter and I have seen football styles change. Some dull, some useless, some fun, some exciting. Equally, managers come and go. Defence and attacking systems come and go. The player personnel changes. But I stick with the Borough. I still watch every match. I don't sit there griping, spewing venom, willing them to lose. I've seen Middlesbrough bankrupt. I've seen them go into liquidation. And I do not want Doctor Who to fail. None of the panellists want to carp and criticise and cancel, and none of us want to puke all over this new production. So if you love Doctor Who, if you want to share that passion with good, honest debate, a laugh with some friends, you're in the right place. I mentioned Middlesbrough going into liquidation. In relation to Doctor Who, how many remember almost 39 years ago to the day, 28th of Feb, 1985, when the show was axed? We had no guarantees it would come back, no certainties. We had to mourn and fight, Doctor in distress. Proper passionate Doctor Who fans worth their salt, not the usual mourners and cancellers and the panels of the perpetually nonplussed. I mean, we can't exactly call these critics gods, more like the grunts of Ragnarok. No proper Doctor Who fans will support and get behind the show where we can. You know, we will. We might not like the management. We might not like the players, the style, but it's our show and we are sticking with it. Not sure what other so-called fans are all about, determined to pick a fight, a problem, an issue. It's a TV programme, my favourite lifelong friend. But let's not go overboard. My Sunday sermon is now ended and it's time we said hello to the panel who've been listening patiently in the background there. So let's bring them all in. I'm pulling them all in, but I'm obviously, there we go. I've made Hugh big. Hello, Hugh. There's your moment in the sun. Let's pull everybody in and let's just get this right. So, Hugh, let's have a look. See why they've done that. I don't know why you've done that. I'll take you there and then put you back. Yeah, she's taking to get that right. My God, you can do a rant and then you get it all right. Oh, I'm in the middle. Oh, gosh, I'm centralized here. There you go.
It's like the Brady Bunch.
I thought that was quite good. That well, you know the score now. I've done my little Sunday sermon.
T-shirt saying I'm with you.
Oh yeah, we're there. Right. Let's pull this together, folks, because obviously my friends, the Strokers, have been actually trying to reenact certain kind of iconic stories from Doctor Who. Since we're doing our love of Doctor Who, obviously we do need to actually celebrate. So not only get your thinking caps on, but I think you need to really be very imaginative. Hopefully this is an easy one. Let's start off. So here we go. Name the iconic story. I love this. I know exactly what it is because they talked me through it, you see. Green is important.
Yeah, is it the Green Death or are we plants?
Well, green is important. Green Death was a fair guess, but I think you need to look at what Walkie as the Doctor is looking at.
The creature from the pit.
What did you say, Robin?
The creature from the pit.
Yes, and TARDIS Spider's got it. Well done, Terry. Yeah, the creature from the pit. Of course it was. There you go.
Couldn't put that one in, could you?
No. I think I did slightly better there, didn't I? I think.
Yeah.
So there you go. One famous moment from Doctor Who, which Tom Baker never forgets. Okay, what about this one? I'll go big again for a moment.
Is that Genesis of the Daleks?
Now, why would you say that?
I was wondering if we were about to touch the wires.
Do I have the right thing?
Yeah.
Do I have the right?
Yes, do I have the right? It's an iconic moment. It's an iconic story. So there you go. Yeah, he's got plenty of leads there. A very clever man he is Willie Stroker. So, okay, well done. Panel's doing well tonight. You really do love your Doctor Who. So let's have a look at the next one. I'll go big again.
For Doomsday?
Well, I like your idea because obviously I went in the kitchen because the Strokers thought if they use the kitchen, it looks all technological behind them and they needed that background. But maybe look what Walkie's got.
It's not Earth Shock, is it?
Go on then, Robin. Explain why.
It looks like there's a star on Roki's left side, and the whole space background.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it is. Yes. And I tried to be helpful. I've put a Cyberman behind them as well because they're a gardener. So basically, Peter Harrington. I don't know if you mean fan rock for this one. Is it because of the rope? Destiny of the Daleks. Honestly, the Strokers will be so upset at this. Right. Next one. We're nearly done. Let's have a look at this one.
Logopolis.
I've heard Logopolis said. Anybody else?
It looks like the White Guardian or whatever. I can't remember what they called it. Yeah, the Watcher, not Guardian.
Mind you, with your American sensitivities, we did when we took the photograph. We said, "Hold on a minute, that bandage effect is peaking at the top. It didn't look like we wanted it to look."
Yeah, that may mean something completely different where I live.
Yeah, a different White Guardian.
Yes, it was.
It's not a gathering of Scottish clans every,
So yeah, it was a bit worrying when we looked at the photograph later, and bless him, Willie Stroker tried his best. Okay, what about this one then? Let's have a look.
The Abominable Snowman?
Oh, fantastic. Look, I mean, we've got the dog with us at the moment, so Walkie Stroker's wearing a dog coat that we thought that'll double up.
There's him right.
Yeah, and that teddy, I thought actually that looks like a Yeti slightly, and then I got a toy TARDIS in the background, and of course it looks like that, doesn't it?
Not bad. These are actually a lot better than I think they have been. I think you've been improving.
Cheeky little devil, honestly. I mean, I think that's
class. There was a compliment in there.
Well, look, we even had silver cushions for the Flint in Wales. I mean, we really, honestly, this is expensive stuff. Okay, the last one. This is a tricky one. You've got to really think about the clues that are there because obviously it's the two Strokers and.
Looks like a deep scene.
The giggles green screen.
Yeah, you could have gone for the green screen. I was thinking when they showed me this, I thought actually it could have been Wild Blue Yonder because everyone went on about that. The one they were getting at was obviously a bit more classic, which was Underworld. They were going on about all the CSI in Underworld. So there's a few testers there for you. So let's take that off. Thank you for that. That's, you see. Oh, look, see, how does this happen? We've got to sort. She's gone big suddenly. I don't know.
We finally know who's in charge.
That's it. I'll have to mess with you. Look at that. I'll have to. That's it. Honestly, we'll have fun with this tonight. Turn. My God. Yeah, I'll have to get myself going up here. Like that's yeah. There you go. Doesn't work. Classic. I'll have to do that a lot. So anyway, we'll do that as we talk. So as I mean, all I can do is make everybody do something crazy like that. That will help. Right. Okay. Obviously, computer's enjoying itself tonight, and that's probably the best way to be, because we are actually wanting to talk about our love of Doctor Who, the 10 reasons we love Doctor Who, the 20 reasons we like Doctor Who. We'll do as many as we can. So let's start off, folks. I mean, why did you get into Doctor Who? Come on, let's go around the panel. Just give us a brief one, just a taster, please. What got you into Doctor Who? Just why did you like it? And since you're on the big screen, Robin, go on, tell us, why do you watch that and not other stuff? Why have you gone for it?
Honestly, I don't know like a solid reason. The way I got into Doctor Who is basically my brother was at a friend's party, which is just down the road from where we used to live. I went there and Army of Ghosts was on TV, like the proper showing of it.
Yeah.
And it just intrigued me. Like I started watching just like, oh, what's this? And then from there, it became an obsession, and I wasted a lot of money on.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
So, what about you, John? Because obviously these are all personal things. What got you into it?
Yeah, I mean, well, my dad worked for the BBC, so him and Mum got me into Doctor Who sort of early 80s. So Peter Davison, was my first Doctor that I remember really, but it was just so different. The TARDIS struck me straight away, just bigger on the inside than on the outside, and I just like the idea of this intelligent alien that was doing good, but he wasn't shooting and blasting things. He was outsmarting his enemies. So I just got hooked on it, and it's been that way ever since.
Yeah. Now, by the way, and it's been good so far, because I know, for example, regarding the TARDIS and all the rest of it, I know from Hugh and others, I know from you, John, you've got particular things, and I've got slides for later, but this is just our opening gambit, so I appreciate you don't have to do the detail now. Brandon, over there in America, what got you into it? Why have you stuck with it?
I wish that I had a cool story like you guys, like I grew up watching it and stuff. I'm in my 40s. It was on over here. They would show reruns on Sci-Fi Channel and PBS, but I never watched it. I never got into it until I was an adult. But just to quickly say, I was sitting around. My first wife and I were getting ready to have a divorce, and I didn't want to sleep in the bed with her, and I was looking for something to watch, and I found Doctor Who. That's a true story.
That's cool enough.
Yeah. So I'm sitting in an easy chair. This is like this is right before the 50th. So this is 2013. And I'm sitting in the easy chair, and I'm like, I gotta find something to watch, man. And it was on Netflix at the time, and I'd never ever in my whole life, at that time I was in my early 30s, I never really stopped to hear what Doctor Who was about. I had worked in comic shops and had people talk about Doctor Who, and I'm standing behind the counter of a comic shop going, nerds. You know what I mean? But then it was like the first episode had me, Rose had me, and so from then on I was crazy into it. And then at the risk of being negative, like the way a lot of modern things are, really shoved me back into checking out classic Who, and that's why I love it more than the rest now.
Well, if I turned that into a short and just said I found Doctor Who because I lost my wife, so to speak.
Hey, that's okay. I replaced her. My current wife is a Doctor Who fan, so I traded up. I'm good.
like Romana. So, Michelle, what's your story? As in, this is just the opening bit, of course. Don't worry, your stories will come later in detail.
My story is fairly new compared to everybody else here. It was 2014. I just got out of college, so I had spent several years being in grad school. So I was aware of Doctor Who. I really didn't have any time to get into anything. Had moved from California to Virginia, knew virtually nobody, was looking for a job. My mom was still traveling back and forth to California, so I was a little bit, not necessarily homesick, but just trying to find my roots. So I had a lot of time off that summer. And I was channel hopping and hit on a Doctor Who marathon when they were celebrating the week before Peter Capaldi's launch. So I'm kind of watching like bits and pieces of this show, like, oh, it's a little bit historical. Oh, it's a little bit sci-fi. Oh, there's a little steampunk in it. And so I decided to sit down and watch Deep Breath, and I've been hooked ever since.
Cool. Well, thanks for that. Hugh, over to you.
So one of my first memories is watching the final, or the end scenes of Evil of the Daleks, and seeing lots of Daleks blowing one another up. And then I just remember sort of like watching Doctor Who and it being Patrick Troughton and finding it fascinating that someone could be in charge, witty, but somehow an outsider, which I think has already been mentioned. It was that whole, he doesn't appear as the hero, but he is. And as a sort of like small child, I just found that fascinating that you could do that.
Yeah, it was different. An anti-hero classic. Cinnamon?
Good to answer this question, because every time someone asks me, I never quite know what to say because it's all part of my life. So like there isn't that one defining moment. Like a lot of say, oh, what was the first football match that you went to? And I haven't quite got that memory. Vague images of seeing sort of around 0. But I think how I got into it would probably be my dad. My dad was always not a big, massive bit, but he likes his Star Trek. It's kind of a lot of pop culture kind of movies of all this. So obviously he must have watched it one day, and then I've just sort of sat down and watched it with him. And then I've it shows that it's very. There's a lot of things about Doctor Who, and it's often said that like it brings outsiders in, whoever you are. If you've outside, there is a lot of attraction to it, whether it be from neurodiversity, even from certain sections of the gay community. There's a lot of people that has attracted. It's that a different type of show. It's not. I was reading Doctor Who magazine just recently, and in one of the columns, Russell T Davies talked about how sort of the charm. It's not like Star Trek. I've never. I plan to, but I've never actually watched Trek as of me saying this. It was, and as Russell said himself, it was always a bit more militarized. It was all a bit more, typical run-of-the-mill kind of army. So, and it would never really. That was more the whimsical. It was more free Doctor Who. It was more you could just get in a box and anything, anywhere, any constrained in a sense. It was more free, a good jumping on point for a lot of people. And that was the hook of the people in.
I loved the changing. I remember Verity Lambert talking about this on Nationwide. She said, changing the locale every 4 or 6 weeks. So you never got bored as a kid. You were always going to new places. You never know where the Doctor would end up, and neither did he. Actually, I agree with Peter in the thread. It was the Sea Devils that got me. It was fear, scaring a kid. That's how you fire their imagination. It creates resilience in some ways. It creates survival strategies. I was always plotting how I'd get out of our street if the Cybermen came around the corner. But the Sea Devils was one of my earliest memories. A little bit of Day of the Daleks. And yes, it seemed as though there were more Daleks attacking that house when I was a kid. There's been cut back since. But yes, it's the fear bit. Perpetually changing and the fear bit. Now, we're obviously spending our night, and our magazine theme is why we love Doctor Who. But obviously, there's Doctor Who news, and there's things to talk about with Doctor Who and see why we love it now. So let's have the news. on tonight's dispatches. More rumours appear about the possible scheduled dates for season 14. We discuss the latest speculation and the potential ramifications for the show's success. An edited scene from the church on Ruby Road might reveal and promise more about the new season focus. We take a look at that and speculate. The animation for Celestial Toymaker was shown at the BFI days ago. We discussed the feedback. I mean, have the usual critics and cancellers been too quick to throw venom on something before they've seen it? I mean, it wouldn't be the first time, would it? And we poke fun at the not-we news fixations in the silly season of non-news. Boy, do they try hard. Tonight on Dispatches. So, first thing to say, how's that happened again? Look at him there. Look at that. It's all sorting himself out. Right. So, news item number 1. I know. I don't know if you picked up the first news there. I'll just outline it there. Basically, I know I've seen it on other channels. People are saying that May the 4th has maybe been discussed as a possibility, which I always thought was the Star Wars Day. But Doctor Who production news here. Someone on Gallifrey Bay said someone close to the show, so someone and someone, that is told them that the 2024 Doctor Who series will transmit 25th of May to the 13th of July. Now, the reason I raise this is I've also put next to that is the European Championships. Football, yes, it's our thing. Starts on the 14th of June, finishes on the 14th of July. That's problematic. I've even looked at the fixtures, and if Doctor Who's on Saturdays, there's big matches on. So, you know, if that's... The rumour is maybe May the 4th to clash with Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you. The other rumour is this one here. Now, I just find it worrying, because I do love this TV programme, that it's coming out so late into summer. Light nights, you know, our memories, Sea Devils and everything, it was dark nights. It was kind of, you didn't want to leave the room. So does anyone think this is a bit worrying and strange scheduling to actually put it there, especially against in the Europeans, you know, football championships? It's going to clash with an awful lot of things.
Yeah, and I would imagine some of those Saturday matches will involve home nations, either England or Scotland.
And yeah, and this is I think this is the problem. I mean, I'm a football fan. I know Cinnamon is. And even if you're not a football fan, it's to be aware that there's going to be a massive clash here.
So, I mean, presumably, if it's a match the BBC have got that they want to show, they might clash with the showing, unless they're going to show it. But the matches are going to be quite late as well, aren't they?
Well, I looked at, there's a 5 o'clock kickoff and an 8 o'clock kickoff on a Saturday night. So Doctor Who, we would guess around 7 p.m., 7:30 p.m., something like that. So obviously the BBC will either have to shunt it forwards or backwards if it's on the BBC. If it's on ITV, then Doctor Who's up against a big championship international football match. So I don't know what people's thoughts are, whether they think that news would... I mean, come on. Church on Ruby Road, we want the ratings high. We want the giggle ratings high. Do we really want this to be challenged by some key event?
The other thing, just to note, in terms of if it's going that late in the year... Sorry?
Sometimes for this, for World Cups and stuff, and for Euros and football, you know, EastEnders is occasionally having to miss days and have days rescheduled and have episodes moved around to accommodate football, for etc. So it's possible.
Yeah.
I mean, but do you want to lose the momentum of having the episodes go? We don't want a gap week.
Yeah, and you don't want it on at different times. You want it to be, you know, okay, 5 minutes here or there doesn't really matter. But sort of if it's moves from 7 till 8:30 or moves from 7:30 till 5. The other thing, Bren, is if it's going as long as the 13th of July, that's into Scottish school holidays.
Yes, and people are on holiday. I mean, I wonder if this is the new. We were saying in the green room before the show started. Is this an indication that actually terrestrial channels aren't that bothered about really the overnights and that, because they know that you can go on holiday, you can come back, you can then pick it up. It's no big deal anymore, maybe.
Well, because it's going to stream in the United States, so they're not going to be worried about live playing. And for the United States, May 25th, that's around a big holiday for us, is Memorial Day, and that's when summer kicks off for us, and when a lot of schools start wrapping up their school year, and then it'll go up into the week of 4th of July, which is our holiday when we declared our independence from you all and won.
Oh yes, yeah. Just to remind us.
Yeah. So we don't have to pay for the BBC, that kind of thing. So in the United States, it's good to have some new TV on, because traditionally also around Memorial Day is when broadcasting their seasons end. And so summertime in the United States is usually the rerun season. So to have new drama, especially for a family show, that is kind of a good use of a series.
Disney Plus will exploit the heck out of that, I'm sure, and they'll probably make sure it doesn't conflict with anything Star Wars. Don't you think, Michelle?
Oh yeah, and I've also heard the rumors that really starting up April, May is when we're going to really start getting the ads in the United States, and probably when the merch is going to start coming out. It'd be interesting to see if they do put anything on the Disney Store websites. But I've heard that Disney is preparing to milk the heck out of Doctor Who when we get into the May period.
But what gets me is they always say, and like I said, we're going to talk about why we love Doctor Who, and we obviously were grabbed. In most cases, I get Brandon saying you were an adult when you saw it, but most of us, it was the dark winter nights, because you were in. Either the weather was rubbish and all the rest of it, and it was cozy to be in. But I do remember if Doctor Who was on later, because there was always a brief period in Britain, and then it would start again late August when school started again. It seemed to be that's when it came back. The summer nights, the kids should be out. I mean, if you're focusing your strategy on winning the family and the kids over, and when people say this program's not for us, it's for the kids will be outside, won't they?
Not anymore.
Not in America. No, that's not.
I would say in the UK, my controversial opinion would be, I don't think they've even got a choice anymore of when they can schedule it. I think its stock has fallen quite a bit in the last few years, and I think they basically just have to put it on when the schedulers say it's going on these dates, take it or leave it. So it's not like it was in RTD's first era, where it was a absolute knockout, and they could say, well, we want it in this slot. It's just, this is what you're getting. That's it. That's for the UK. Obviously, worldwide's a completely different thing, as Michelle was just saying. So, it doesn't worry me too much. If people are going to watch it, people are going to watch it, aren't they? Whether it's catch up or live, but
yeah. And they keep adding them up, just like I'll keep adding up our YouTube views for the next 20 years and hope that we get into 3 figures. So the second news item, though, there's this one. I don't know if anybody saw this. What's interesting is you get to see edited bits from scenes that should have been in, say, the Giggle or the Church on Ruby Road. But some of them give you little glimmers, those extra scenes that they had to cut to keep everything within an hour or something. So anyway, I'll show you this edited scene and see what you make of how we can project or speculate about season 14 and 15. So if you just take a look there, the Doctor says there was an incursion into this world. Do you know the Giggle, where everyone went mad? That was caused by a drastic transgression known as the Toymaker, and he brought his legions with him. This is his legacy, forces of nature, but forces of a different nature, writing their own rules. And I'm out of my depth. I've got no rules. I love, love, love the rules. And Sherry, as you know, Ruby Sunder's mum, you're a crazy man, c'est moi, Sherry. So if you can see there, is that an indication, the best indication so far, that we're going for fantasy, that we're going for almost alternative universe? What does everybody make of what this kind of hints where we're going to go with season 14 and 15?
Well, that was a big hint, even in Wobble Yonder, where he played a superstition to defeat a until an alien being when we had to count the sand. So I see very much as going into that. There's been a crack. There's been an opening by the Doctor, by the Giggle into this more fantastical world.
And that's referenced in the Giggle as well. So
yeah, I mean, do you think this is a nice genius idea? RTD does have these big ideas sometimes on how he's either going to bring back Doctor Who, and Time War will kind of be the bandage over lots of things just so we can get on with a lot more plot. It was only later that the Time War was really kind of dug over, wasn't it? But he just used Time War as a lazy reference just to get on with things and to say he was the last of the Time Lords. I wonder if he's got another genius idea now, which is, look, there's the flux and there's all these things, and I'm going to sound nice to my mates, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go very big on fantasy, alternative universe, all the rules are different, and then I can do what the hell I want for a little while.
Well, and that's also a way to say none of these ideas stick. Alternate universe, it's not really the real world. So if you don't like the Timeless Children, other universe, because you can even back it up to when the TARDIS kicked the Doctor out during Regeneration. Alternate universe.
It's a funny one. It's like Raymond Williams is just saying there, magic is magic, no need to explain it. Are you one of those fans, Raymond, that's happy with that? I'm one of those sticklers. I'm a funny one, with science, fantasy and science fiction. I really want it kind of in between those two. If it goes too fantasy, I kind of get a bit problematized, So, for example, although I don't want to do any critiques tonight, the sledgehammer duplicating a TARDIS just pushed it a bit too far for me, whereas... we can have the other gobbledygook that Doctor Who does all the time, like, the TARDIS is bigger on the inside, I can live with that version because it has a consistency to it once you've accepted it. So, Raymond, are you thinking we're happy with this magical fantasy thing? Is it the type of thing you like, or are you saying that and kind of thinking, I hope we don't go in that direction? Does open up, though, discussions about Jinx Monsoon's character, and because we might be in an alternative reality, that fantasy monster that I showed you a couple of weeks back that's in the new series. We've mentioned the salt reference from Michelle there. It brings into light Isaac Newton's depiction, which I was wondering what was going on there, and we mentioned it before. But I wonder if this is part of the magical explanation that all the rules are different now. And it brings into play that Susan Twist character, who seems to be in an awful lot of time zones, same person. And it brings into play RTD discussing that he wanted the opening credits to make a bigger play of something that kind of wavy effect, kind of rubbing hard against the TARDIS, as if it was kind of, there was a friction there. And it brings into play Mrs. Flood. Now, I'm throwing these all at you so that the thread and yourselves can actually say any little speculations there where you think, wow, where could we go with this then regarding these characters over these two seasons? Anybody want to kind of bite at the cherry at some of these?
Brendan, real quick, something I just wanted to say was used to be I would get excited and you go and watch something just to have the mystery unraveled for you. You know what I mean? That's a lot of times the whole reason you watch anything. But for some reason, this particular instance, I'm more like, hey, why don't you explain a little bit more of it to me first, and then we'll see. You know what I mean? Like I'm a little opposite of that. I want more information before I go in to find out more information.
Yeah, as Peter just pointed out about the day that obviously was fantasy, was science. I'm beginning to wonder if there will be like a scientific explanation to the fantasy stuff for RTD.
Yeah, I think Robin, I was going to touch on a similar point as well, and I think for me, I want that. And the best example for me is when you go back and you watch the third Doctor story, the Daemons. Everyone thinks it's the devil, but there's a scientific and alien explanation for that devil in that story. And that's what I really like about it. And for me, that's Doctor Who.
Just to agree, but also point out that some of that's obviously Quatermass as well, that type of approach. I think you're right. I think if you do that type of thing, that works. It's a question of whether that's going to happen this time.
Yeah, I don't think it will. I agree. I agree.
Series 2 as well, when you got the other episode, that has the devil in it, and there's talk about it's very sort of heavily sort of religion, and like I like how it sort of says in that episode how it doesn't downright say, "Oh yeah," that you think it is. It might be the devil. That you might not think about it. It might not make sense in the episode how it's maybe it's body, or maybe this is maybe we've misunderstood the devil, or maybe we've had all these different ideas of what he might be. I always really liked how it was handled in that story.
Yeah. So go on, Michelle, go
on. This idea of multiverse is everywhere right now. It's in pop culture. It's even on like the History Channel talking about possibilities for why people see Bigfoot and UFOs right now, to even more ghosts. So this idea that multiverse, I think, is very much picking up on what is relevant, what people are thinking about. I think they may in time give it a more scientific explanation. I think someone in the comments mentioned the string theory, which is a possibility, that we're just multiple dimensions and sometimes we have a bleed through, without necessarily going into, well, it may be fantasy to us, but in this world, that's just how everything is aligned based on their scientific principles. I wouldn't be surprised if we're going to go into that route.
Well,
which makes me wonder about whether they'll do something about the Mandela effect.
Yes, that would be yeah.
That would be neat.
Yeah, so if I can imagine, if anyone's on the thread or watching it, of the Mandela effects, it's where you misremember things that actually happen, and think that something happened that didn't. I can imagine that if you're doing that, there's the possibility of looking at it. Certainly.
And it is certainly, I would agree with Russell Davies that it's certainly exciting, a doctor character that's 60 years old televisually, to suddenly be challenged by there's no rules that he understands anymore. That is an interesting predicament for our hero that he hasn't faced before, apart from maybe in The Matrix and Deadly Assassin, when the rules were different suddenly. The third news item, of course, was well, it's not even released yet, but we've got the Celestial Toymaker that was at the BFI. They showed one, they're all talking about episode 3. I think episode 1 is still getting locked in. So there was a lot of feedback from that, especially on Twitter. And to be quite honest, I don't know about you, but did you see a lot of people loved the animation and said, look, don't do the animation like this every single time, but it works for the type of plot and that kind of fantasy element that was actually in Celestial Toymaker. And I'll just show you the shots again there. Did anyone see that? Because actually, I'm not one of those who cancels myself and says, I'm not buying this. When I saw these photographs before, I thought, I get it. You're making actually the Celestial Toymaker from the 60s look more fantastical, which surely was the point. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
I mean,
it was very. The thing is, the story that it's a very visual story. With the Toymaker or Celestial Toymaker as a story, compared to the rest, like I've listened to the audio of it, and you can try and use your imagination to piece certain bits together, but it's very heavily focused. Like I think the scenes where jumping across certain things and nobody's talking, it's just like giggle sounds from the clowns or something like that. But it's a very visual story, so I can see maybe why they went into this stylistic choice of animation rather than the sort of slightly 2D versions you could say that we've been getting before. I know we got a lot of flack. I didn't think it was that terrible. I've seen, I can't remember his name, but there's a fan out there who did a sort of his own version of this as a sort of mock-up, and his was kind of very good. And again, maybe the color as well, and maybe the style of the faces. Again, a lot of people weren't happy with it, but when I saw it, it didn't look too bad to me, I guess.
It looks like Clone
I like
Wars.
the animation. I just don't like the fact that none of the characters look like the actors.
Right.
That's my problem.
Yeah,
Please tell me
I agree
Disney
with
didn't have a
Robin
hand in
there.
this.
That was probably my biggest thing.
I think with me, I'll always weigh it up when I see it myself, because there's always talk online about I don't like this or I do like this, but I'll watch it myself and then I'll make a judgment once I've watched it. My thought on the animations would be, I know there's loads of talk about recolorizing black and white. I'd rather they just put as much funding into the missing episodes to spend that money on the animations.
Yep.
Do that first, then talk about colorizations. Because
you see, John, me and Cinnamon on another channel, we were discussing this on Friday, weren't we, Cinnamon? And we were thinking, actually, I wonder if the money's now getting slightly more directed, less to the animations.
Yeah.
That are like Marco Polo is never going to be animated, is it? And actually going to the Daleks colorization, the War Games colorization, and the colorization of material. It's a speculation. It's a guess.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. I think that's what they're doing. But I'd much rather them spend that time on the animations than episodes we've already got. That for me, I love in black and white anyway. Let's work on the stuff we haven't got. Then we can go from there.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So there you go.
We've already got a good collection of them so far now. For them to just stop that and then to sort of
they should do
quickly.
They should do Marco Polo.
Yeah.
We'll stop
this time again.
Animations for now. Now we're going to do the colorization of the story.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm a completionist, so I want that collection set with all of those seasons that are animated with the missing episodes. So don't let me down, BBC.
And I don't know about you, but there isn't that much news out really this morning. At this moment, I think there's bits and bobs, but I find it fascinating how people can get excited about various things. Sam West in the Radio Times said he wanted to be in Doctor Who's Dimensions in Time. We're going back to 93, and that's it. That's the story. You've got Jinx Monsoon, who hasn't actually physically been in Doctor Who yet, is selling a fragrance. I mean, I really, and you've got a trans influencer who's a voiceover actor in one of the Doctor Who voice. I mean, and you just think, I'm passionate about Doctor Who, and I know when there's messaging and everything, but honestly, that's not Doctor Who news. That's just chip wrapper news, and there hasn't been much news. It's quiet, deliberately quiet, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, we've kind of already, we've done the news and everything, but remember, this is our new magazine show. And of course, normally you won't see the tunnel effect anymore. You're going to see this. This is our new opening sequence for the Sensphere Sunday show to show we're going big. See if it works. Anyway, here we go. Oh, well, there you go. Let's go.
Welcome back to the Robin Sphere.
Yeah, that was fantastic.
That was freaking
movie.
awesome, Brendan. That was nice, man.
Oh, I enjoyed doing that. I
Love
enjoyed.
that.
Did you get Industrial Light and Magic to do that for you?
You know what? All done by my little fair hand. So thanks, Timescales. Nice intro. I tried my best. I'm doing it for you, everybody. Network quality, says TARDIS Spider. Thank you. Peter Harrington. Very nice, lovely mixture of old and new graphics. So obviously, I mean, the panel will tell me later, but we've got our tunnel sequence, which we can use for every Science Free show, or we could use it for our reviews, like on Tuesday. Or we could actually, this is our Sunday magazine new titles. I don't know what your thoughts are, but we're doing this for everybody. We're doing it. It's fun. It's about loving Doctor Who. And of course, I loved making that and just let my imagination run absolutely riot. And of course, this is why we're here. And of course, just while I'm talking about it, on Tuesday, there's another biggie. And I have to say, it's a head-to-head of the massive scale. Look at that. It's our first ever review on Senssphere, and we're going to review Classic versus New Who in their treatment of the Sontarans. So Time Warrior versus War of the Sontarans. Tune in at 4:00 on Tuesday. What do we make of how the Sontarans have been treated across the history of the program? So we've done it, we've sold it, we've bigged it up, we've gone big budget and everything, but we are here to talk about Doctor Who and why we're into it. So please, let's go around the panel again. And this time, what was your stepping on point, your story? What got you going with Doctor Who? So I know you've kind of given us an opening gambit, but give us a memory, give us a moment that got you into Doctor Who. Michelle?
Deep breath when the Doctor comes out of the TARDIS for the first time.
Go on, you talk about that, and I'll reinforce it with the pics, of course.
Just that Scotsman just stole my heart. I mean, I just love it. I mean, it just has moments like I like this show. I want to see more about this show. Who are these people? Who are these characters? I mean, when he calls Strax, was a sleepy or whatever, that was just or grumpy. That was so funny. I mean, just the humor and the the costumes and just everything.
So I was interested because this is what I mean. It's so fascinating. You said deep breath, and I went, deep breath. I was even shocked. I know you said earlier, 2014, you first discovered. Had you heard of Doctor Who before 2014?
Yes, I was aware of it. I saw the ads for the second season with Rose on for when they used to air on Sci-Fi. I was aware of it. The David Tennant years. I was aware of Matt Smith because David Tennant and Matt Smith, especially Matt Smith, were heartthrobs in the United States. But also at this time period, I was in grad school getting my master's in history, and so I did not have any time for a serialized show.
Well, you've got Peter Harrington there. You saw Deep Breath at the cinema. Can you imagine that on the big screen? So. What did you make, though? Can I just ask you, Michelle? So you're discovering Doctor Who properly now, as in you're watching it. Deep Breath is a funny one because you've got a Doctor who's conflicted, doesn't know who he is, and all that stuff. I mean, did you find that fascinating or a problem to relate to?
I found it fascinating because I was also looking up when I was watching this marathons of other episodes where I'm only watching bits and pieces of it, and so then I'm going online, I'm looking and I'm like, oh, okay, there's more of these guys. They change. Okay, so I was aware of regeneration. Okay, so every Doctor's going to have a slightly different personality.
And Michelle, did you also enjoy that episode where you get Matt Smith, the 11th Doctor, at the end, who's basically on the phone talking to Clara, and they do that lovely little sequence?
I understood that. I knew that he had come done beforehand. At the moment, I thought it was lovely. Now looking back, it's kind of unfair for Capaldi to have that, especially when you realize, and I understand Clara going through the time stream, she's seen everybody, so she should know. So at the time, it's like, oh, that's cute. Now it's like, that's unfair to Capaldi. It's like, I think we're going to have the same feelings about the giggle, where it's like, oh, it's cute Tennant and Shooty. Now, like, oh, it's unfair to Shooty.
Yeah.
Now, Brandon, you've got an interesting story. I'm talking to the Americans first because it's fascinating to hear. Brandon, you sent me a few photographs. If I show this and you can talk us through what Doctor Who means to you. So here we go.
Oh yeah, this is me and my son like 8 years and 80 pounds ago. He got all my hair too. He's turning 16 in a week or two. This was his first convention, and we went. And there's a little picture we had taken, and I just one of the things that came out of Doctor Who that I thought was pretty cool was like it became like a Christmas tradition for us to watch the specials and just have a marathon of Doctor Who on Christmas. But yeah, this was a good memory. And,
and
go
so
ahead.
now he's getting a bit older, Brandon. Is he still into Doctor Who?
I had to take him to his girlfriend's house for the day before we started, so no. You know how it is. Like my dad used to joke with me when I was younger, and he'd say, "Boy, when you discover girls, you'll forget all about them comic books." And he was right until you get a little bit older and you learn how to balance the two. But yeah, my son's in that, getting ready to get his driver's license and girls, high school sort of stuff, But one thing I did want to say was when Michelle said that about like the moment or what gets you into it. The thing when I'm watching, I believe it was the very first episode, and the doctor takes Rose's hand and he goes to that kind of speech about how he can feel how fast the earth is turning and moving on that's when it got me. I was like, okay, I'm down. This is my sort of thing. And that's when I knew I was going to keep watching it.
Do you know, I will briefly concur with that. When in Rose, that piece of dialogue happened, I thought, I've not heard this in Doctor Who before. Wow. So different. Interesting angle that the Doctor is aware of that. And I love that. Yeah, I totally agree with you. Anybody else want to join in? John, tell us about your stepping on point, please.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously Mum and Dad got me into it via the BBC connection, but it was really what cemented it for me was they came home one day and they brought back the VHS tapes for Death to the Daleks and Robots of Death, those two there. And I watched Death to the Daleks and I thought, this third Doctor is superb. Then I watched Robots of Death, and the fourth Doctor, Tom Baker, just absolutely blew me away. And I still, Robots of Death is up there as one of my favorites. It is absolutely superb, and I never get tired of it. It's just got everything that is perfect Doctor Who for me.
Visuals, man, the visuals, the design. It's just like it's aesthetically, it's one of the most pleasing episodes, period, for me of Doctor Who.
And to do that, sort of like with however much time they had and the budget, it's just incredible.
Yeah, you know me,
and you talk about scripts now, and it had it all, didn't it? Really, it had the comedy, it had the serious elements of it. It just worked on so many levels for me, and the supporting cast, they're great as well. So yeah, it's Golden Who for me.
And what an intro for you! And I have to say, while we're talking about Robots of Death, obviously I put it on our Facebook page, but we all learned the sad news last week about Pamela Salem. I loved her in Doctor Who. I mean, I'm just a kid who watches Doctor Who, but you notice certain actors and actresses that you just kind of like. I loved Nerys Hughes when she was in Kinder. I wanted her to stay on the TARDIS. But Pamela Salem, who was just in Robots of Death, it took years before she was back in. I really liked that. I felt for that. I wanted that character to survive. I didn't want her to die. And just sad news. As fans, we respect what people have done, and I loved her characterization in this and in Remembrance of the Daleks. So, rest in peace, and sorry to hear the news about Pamela Salem.
Yeah.
So, Robots of Death was your one. I think. Well, I saw you thumbs up. I mean, this. Yes, I agree with you. I could watch this forever. When you told me about the videos of your parents, that was the first one I got, and I had
lovely.
I was working in a hotel. I was doing my A levels during the day. Writing your essays before you go to work at 7:30. Working in a hotel till 2 or 3 in the morning. Going to college and cycling there at 8 in the morning. I don't know how I did it, but I did. But you got paid £1 an hour in those days, and so that cost me £29.95, I think it was. And so that was 30 hours of work. Actually, it'll have been a bit more because they took tax off for meals I didn't have. So basically, I paid 30 or so hours of hard labor to get that one video, and it means a lot to me.
Yeah, it's great. I mean that cemented for me why I love the Fourth Doctor, and he's my favorite, because I then got that for my birthday, and just as soon as I got to the bit where Harry Sullivan is an imbecile, you know, that was it. I was hooked with the Fourth Doctor. It just, no one comes close to it.
It's this crazy dialogue. You mentioned Robots of Death.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, it must have reawakened an English teacher in me, because I remember certain lines, you know, whether it was a statement or an inference. I remember that argument. You know, I'm thinking, wow, there's different types of sentences. What's all this? Tom Baker's so clever. You know, little nuggets like that. Just like Brandon said with the Rose episode, that one line just sells it. It's fantastic. Clever writing. Cinnamon, where would you like to go with you did send me stuff, but it was just I'd locked in the stuff. So what was your stepping on point with Doctor Who? I know there's a time lag, so he'll come in a minute.
I'm impressionable. Like I said, of course, I think collecting was a big part of it of my childhood. I remember, like, when I was young, being autistic, you just obsess. If you've got something, you just latch onto it. So I wanted to absorb fathomable thing that I could about the show. And you know, I sent you the picture earlier of the Sun. This used to release sort of quick part episodes of certain stories. So I think William Hartnell was Dalek's Master Plan. Second Doctor was the Faceless Ones. Then Spearhead from Space, like John said there. The Fourth Doctor one was Fifth Doctor was Earthshock. So those stories were the first delve into classic Who. Those were the first stories I saw Doctors.
Yeah.
And I remember watching that and them talk about the cubes and playing with the yo-yo. Although it was this was the first time I watched it. I didn't know it was Doctor at the time. Didn't know his companion. Didn't know that TARDIS. Very similar. It felt, although I hadn't seen it, it was completely foreign, but yet it was familiar, because I thought, well, you've got this commanding presence. You've got the sort of you've got the TARDIS. Everything still felt like, oh, it's relatable. Oh, I know that, even though I hadn't seen it. Just to collect of it. Just like I remember, as a youngster, I wanted to own every Who story. Not quite that impressive, because it's a fairly easy thing to do. But I remember being so ambitious in every single story, and I remember owned every single story. I hadn't even seen all the classic Who up until so I made during lockdown, had nothing else to do. So of course I then work, and again, like Brendan said there, the sort of the feeling of going to work and then something, knowing that you want, you set there's a target there and you want to get something. So I bought every single story. Again, fairly cheap, £2-3 each on eBay, through the entire of course. And then I watched every single story. Of course, for the missing 60s ones, I just bought the the BBC audio, because we thankfully still have the audios for those stories. So I did those, got the animes, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it gave me a real experience. But this past, I'll always remember, the era of the first Russell era, more so with Matt Smith. I remember more of it. I think I caught on towards the just I remember Christmas Day, and it was the end of time, and I remember my family, and I remember it now clear as day, watching it all and seeing him regenerate, my sister crying, that make it all worth it, and
that would be us doing Logopolis.
Just how fun it was as a child. It's one thing as an adult, but to be a child it's something special, and then to grow up with it.
So Hugh, you're stepping on point. What grabbed you? What those moments you remember?
Yeah, so I'd obviously talked about Patrick Troughton's portrayal, and you put up obviously your recreation of Gettys and him wearing the coat, and I remember trying to understand what was going on with the coat, because it was sort of like the monster as well. But one thing I think, just in terms of that, and it was interesting. I did a watch through of Doctor Who during lockdown as well. I got to Spearhead from Space, and I know lots of people talk about it and being scary. I've never been that scared by Doctor Who particularly. There's an element of it that's scary, but that's not the main thing for me. And I was feeling quite uneasy, and I realised actually what I was channeling was, I remember that being shown and having enough understanding to know that this was a huge change, and not really liking it. And it was my my sort of, this isn't Patrick Troughton, and because that's sort of like that first episode in particular isn't much of Pertwee, and he's a bit out of it for a while, and I'm just going, this isn't right. And then all of a sudden, whenever you get through to the later parts of it, it starts chiming, and you start getting that familiar feeling that cinema was just talking about watching it. And I remember sort of like going from a sort of a 6.5, 7-year-old who was sort of really quite upset to suddenly going, yeah, I get it now. And I think sort of like at that stage, I knew I was going to be a fan forever, because I'd got over the scariness of the change.
Now, please tell me, just while we're there, why did you pick these photographs? As in this,
right? So, I mean, so this is the web planet, and it's yeah. I would never say to people who want to watch classic Who haven't watched it, go and watch the web planet first. It's one of those series which is too long. There are lots of things that don't work. But again, sort of as with Robots of Death, I have no idea how much money they had to spend on this. Probably less than you earned in an hour, Brendan. And to do that, but not just trying to do the costumes, but to do the movement and have choreography involved in it, to do language and try and change language, and to try and put that all together on a budget and a time scale which is jaw-droppingly tight at the time. It's that ambition. And every now and again you see something on Doctor Who which is about ambition, and maybe with the fantasy stuff, I'll get a chance. Maybe that will turn out to be great, because I watch the web planet every time when I go through and rewatch it, and find something new to admire about it, because they put that together on nothing.
And I am dying to see the season 15 Blu-ray collection, to see Underworld again, to actually decide. Because yes, Underworld gets that kind of, as you say, about whether they had the budget, whether that to be creative and make do. It gets a bad rap. Red Planet gets a bad rap. Underworld gets a bad rap. I want to see it again and have a good look at it with all the material. Now, just before we move on, I've advertised in the thread where we might go next. But can I just say, for example, my stepping on point, I've mentioned the Green Death and the Sea Devils and everything, but may I just show you, this got me won over for good. This is me.
No way.
This is me. This is me at Longleat House.
Doesn't he look like Adric? Come on.
Well, that's not quite.
Yeah, that's the face of a kid who could crash into a planet on an asteroid or something for sure.
It did affect me that much. But anyway, so yeah, it's a good.
It looks like the Sontarans doing a recruitment drive for you.
He almost became that whiny smart kid that was in that episode where they're doing the Atmos gas and killing everybody. He was almost that guy.
Keep Brendan away from the exhausts.
There's evidence I'm the same height as a blooming Sontaran. So this is. Just so I can rattle through this very quickly. So basically, yes, I mean, my dad took me at midnight by surprise to Longleat, the Woodstock of Doctor Who conventions. And yes, I was stood next to Patrick Troughton, and he was an enigma. And my dad had to kind of nudge me, because I didn't recognize him from the Three Doctors, if you get my gist. And he said, "That's Patrick Troughton." And Then, of course, John Pertwee comes out the TARDIS and does his showman and whoa, goes for it big time. You know, these are fantastic. And I wouldn't leave this marquee. You're supposed to leave after every panel. And there's obviously JNT with keeping an eye on Patrick Troughton because it was his first convention and he was nervous as hell. And you could get so close to the stars. They were just walking around Longleat. You know, they had these kind of territorial army with blooming Doctor Who badges on their beret, and that was it, really. It was fantastic. And, you know, you had the sets there and everything. I mean, look, all those people. And we didn't pay to get in. We actually parked so close to the grounds and before they set up the kiosk that actually my story is we didn't pay because we were already kind of in. So I know. And that's me last year looking after Colin Baker's money. Good old Colin Baker. I had a lovely chat with him all day. So basically, you know, what got me into Doctor Who, that sort of thing. Now, let me just kind of take that off. There's one person missing, and it did get mentioned in the credits. It said there'll be a John cameo. And of course, yeah. I was hoping he was stuck in some time eddy like William Hartnell or in some time like Tom Baker. But oh no, he's appeared. There he is.
Hello.
Colin the midwife hasn't come on yet?
I seem to be stuck up here.
Thank God.
No dandy and clown comments, please.
Did you start without me?
Oh, sorry, I give you the wrong time deliberately.
Did you start without me? A similar thing happened on my wedding night.
Yes. Sorry, folks.
Oh, you know,
I'm getting pesky with John. I said to him we were starting the
What's been going on?
So
What's been going on?
We are asking John, and so you've come at a good time. What got you into Doctor Who? Your first memory? What made you stick at it?
What made me stick at it?
Yeah, what was your stepping on point? You know, your first experience that made you think this is different. It's not like another program I'm not going to watch again.
It'll come as no surprise to anybody who's listened to my ramblings on this network that I don't like science fiction. I absolutely can't abide science fiction. It's not my bag at all. And I think that's why I like Doctor Who, because Doctor Who is everything science fiction shouldn't be. And I think that's what attracted. We were two oddballs and we met each other one Saturday night. And I think it was the Saturday nightedness, if that's such a word, of Doctor Who. And for our American cousins, our colonial cousins, who didn't maybe get it on a Saturday night, I think you missed a trick there because Doctor Who was Saturdays. So not being science fiction, just being downright scary, and probably having the most charismatic leading man in television at the time was John Pertwee. Tara Spider, I'm thinking about you whenever I mention John, having the most charismatic leading man on television just gave it a synergy. And the two of us just were, it was a brief encounter. We were fated to meet. And I've stuck by it through thick and thin, the magazines, the merchandise, videos, VHSs. I'm now buying Doctor Who stories for the 4th and 5th time. That's how much we love this stuff. And I don't perceive a point ever, even in the depths, the nadir, Chris Chibnall, Who, I still stuck with it because there is something very special about this program. Look at this panel. Look at us all. We're crossing the globe here. And one thing unites us all, our love for this. And it is a silly little program, but it's absolutely essential to our lives. It informs us, it educates us, it entertains. It is, if you like, the BBC in microcosm. It informs, educates, and entertains. It's beautiful.
Now, you did mention, John, and I'm coming to Robin on the second round, but you mentioned the Saturday night lineup. So let me just show you one example and get the Americans maybe jealous. I don't know. This is 1975.
I wasn't alive.
So news at 5:15, then Doctor Who Ark in Space Part 3 at 5:30, then The Wonderful World of Disney, then Saturday Night in the Movies, Lulu, Kojak, Match of the Day, Parkinson, our big interviews with all the Hollywood stars, How would you fancy going back to that time zone again, John?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you know, you don't want to sound like an old, forgive the French, fart by constantly saying it was much better back in the day. But you scan down,
It was.
that's lovely, isn't it? You know, you've got Doctor Who. I mean, what's not to like about the Ark in Space? You've got presumably the wonderful world of Disney is usually when you had a Labrador and a cat trying to get out of the desert, you know, and there was a lovely little story when they were narrated by some whole Mickey Rooney or whoever it was, star of the day. And then I don't know what Blindfold was. It's not a movie I can recall, but it was always nice to see Lulu, who used to live around the corner from my mum and dad, prancing about, and Kojak. Oh, Kojak. Wasn't Kojak fabulous?
Yeah, and as a kid, you got the lollies.
Yeah, and nowadays, of course, Kojak wouldn't be allowed lollies, in the same way Doctor Who's not allowed jelly babies, because apparently all your teeth fall out, or your hair fall out, in Kojak's case.
Well, so there you go. And just so I'm fair, because obviously there's people of different ages here, and I'm thinking, well, I'm sorry, 75. I wasn't around. So let's try.
Are you 75? Are you 75?
Yeah, the Grecian 2000. It's working really well. Now, I think everybody is aware.
I think you look like a 2,000-year-old Greek. Yeah.
It was doing them graphics. It was knackerizing. So let's all go to 1996, the Doctor Who movie. So we're
still not alive.
Yeah, still. I'll get you there eventually, Cinnamon. You can time travel though. Look at this. This was the Monday bank holiday. It was in England. So we've got the news, then the regional news, then Neighbours, big soap, then the Red Nose Awards, charity thing, That Showbiz quiz, Watchdog Health Check, then EastEnders, which is a soap. There's Doctor Who, the movie. That's the latest time I've ever seen Doctor Who on British television, ever. Then news, then a sci-fi series called Lazarus. And then even by 11:40, you've got Donovan's Reef, which is going way back. Is that John Wayne, I think? So basically, there you go. And Crimpling is just telling us about Blindfold. Yes, it was Rock Hudson. Yeah, Rock Hudson. So do you fancy... Do you know what? When I saw this, I thought, apart from Doctor Who, that's a fairly rubbish night.
I'll give a shout out for Cold Lazarus, because it's not just a sci-fi series. It's Dennis Potter, and it's one of Dennis Potter's last work. Is it his greatest work? No, but it's interesting anyway. So it was quite brave for the BBC to put that on, and they did that in conjunction with Channel 4, who put on the other part of the series, because Potter is, if you want to have an example of someone who is as important to British television as Doctor Who, it'd be hard to think of someone other than Dennis Potter, David Attenborough, and Dennis Potter, and they're both sort of mavericks in their own way.
No, I agree. I remember I was stunned that Channel 4 and BBC One were showing that and sharing it, so to speak. It was a very interesting idea. It was Brian somebody, wasn't it? It was just the head. And it was an awful sci-fi theory that
it was Albert Finney, I think.
Yeah, it's Albert Finney, yeah.
You know that you could get into his head, and he couldn't stop you getting into his head. It was like a mental assault, really. You have no privacy. It was amazing. So yes, I do. There you go. So 75, 1996. There's a few more I'll show later on, but. While we're all here and we're all talking about what's good about Who, I've got to finish off with Robin. What was your stepping on point, Robin?
Well, as I aforementioned, it was Army of Ghosts. The first part I saw of it was as soon as they apprehend the TARDIS, and there's the conversation between the 10th Doctor and Yvonne. It's like you won't get in, just like, yeah, that's my first stepping on point there. And I remember watching it all the way through. I think it might have just been David Tennant as the 10th Doctor that drew me in.
Yeah.
I had no idea what was going on. I'd never seen Doctor Who before. And here I am in part 1, the series finale. And I'm just like, okay.
Can I just add to that as well? Because I think you're really spot on with that, actually. Because again, I was the same. I was also drawn in by Tennant because, again, historically, Doctor Who was never a show that you typically bragged about. It didn't have quite the same, finesse and popularity as maybe something like Star Wars or Star Trek, something a bit more considered mainstream. At school, I was always, occasionally teased about, you've been a kiddie show. And, David Tennant made it cool to be cool. You know, it made it cool to be a geek, kind of, to be young and to be different.
Yeah. And then after that, it was my foster dad who found out what it was. Then I saw Rose for the first time. So I went back and saw the first episode of New Who, and from there I got into it. And then classic Doctor Who. It was on Christmas. One of my foster parents brought me like a classic Doctor Who DVD, and it's Sylvester McCoy. It still remains my favourite episode of his era, and that's Ghostlight. I love Ghostlight. It's
look at all the heads going, yeah.
Yeah. It's just such a mad episode. Like, it's just like throw everything at the wall, see what sticks, and I love it because of that. It's just so unpredictable. It's funny. It's scary. I love light as a concept. Yeah.
So when you
I think that madness, sort of like that relates back to what I was saying about the web planet. Sometimes you see things like that where, because it's the single best idea for a television series ever, because it allows anything to happen, and sometimes anything does.
And here was a doctor as well, actually testing the companion and saying, "I'm bringing you somewhere to face your fears." That was a first for me. So that's
McCoy.
Yeah.
And the first that we'd ever really seen backstory for a character like that, because Ace was really the thing about the Seventh Doctor era, and then battle, even I always look at Survivor as a perfect story that leads into the New Who, because with characters like Ace, she was the Rose before Rose, because she was the character that they focus more character development and give him more of a backstory. That's why I love Curse of Fenric with the whole thing about the baby and stuff, because as much as I like Perry, there wasn't much to it in terms of a history, apart from her being a botany student or whatever that was.
By the way, can I just do a little interruption, which is I haven't actually explained to people who are maybe new to us that we are still seeking subscriptions. We hit 150 the other day, and thank you to everybody. Now, you may remember The Guardian in Colony in Space. Well, your subscriptions will get galactic credits to actually... Well, number one, get him a makeover. I mean, just look at the state of him. Get him a makeover. We've got some ideas on how we could do it. But honestly, your subscriptions will be really useful in the Whoniverse, because I can convert them so quickly to galactic credits. Give our lovely Guardian. I mean, he's looking after them nuclear weapons, isn't he? I mean, he needs a makeover. The trouble is, when I did that one on the left, I thought of this. I mean, he looks like Jim Bowen from Bullseye, which was a 1980s dart show in Britain.
Let's look at what you could have won.
You gotta love the British. Let's make a show about throwing darts at a wall.
Oh, it was so complex, Michelle.
Have
a guest from Manchester and offer them a speedboat as well. As
The only reason I know about this show is that one of the guys on one of the contestants murdered somebody, the Bullseye murderers, and they made a documentary about it.
Yeah.
Well, well, don't you think that's the kind of makeover I'm talking about for the subscription? So come on, if you haven't given us a subscription, we can make the Guardian from Colony in Space look like Jim Bowen. Oh, maybe that doesn't work.
We can launch our own 1980s dart show on Doctor.
It's all time travel tonight. Now,
or dart to certain showrunners we don't like.
This next celebrity dart throwing.
So I was asking the thread, actually, building up to this item, I was asking them what their favourite TARDIS crew was. Because we talk about our love of Who, and of course, we've all had different stepping on points. So the only way I can really deduce how you feel about TARDIS crew is to do my Snog, Marry, Avoid, Rose, River, Romana item. So stay tuned, everybody. There you go. just to keep I keep the level at a certain level. So we're going to talk first about the TARDIS crew from 1963. So if I could just actually build that up, that was obviously William Russell, Ian Chesterton, Barbara Wright, Jacqueline Hill, and Caroline Ford Susan. So if I just set it up and actually just show you, I want to race around the panel. Who would you snog, marry, avoid? It's the classic question. We're talking about the character. So here we go. There we go. So if I went round from Robin, snog, marry, avoid, who would you go for?
Okay, well, I'm avoiding Susan like the plague. I'm sorry, but
is it the unearthly nature of her that
it's just the fact that all she does is scream and fall over all the goddamn time.
Well, she's got a bad ankle. She's got a bad ankle.
She
tends to twist it.
Yeah, she always has a bad ankle. Yes, I'm avoiding Susan. Oh, Jan, this is a difficult one, isn't it? Well,
just go for it.
Yeah, so I'm just. Well, okay, you've got to marry Ian Chesterton. I'm sorry, but it's Ian Chesterton.
And he's got good genes. You're gonna be with him for a long time. What about Barbara then? So what's left?
Obviously, I'll snog Barbara.
Snog Barbara before she becomes an Aztec queen or something. John, where would you go with these three?
Snog Susan, marry Barbara, avoid Ian.
Avoid Ian. It's all them history lessons, maybe. Brandon?
I was like, I like the character of Ian so much. I'm straight, and I would almost marry him too. I've recently watched all of these too. My favorite First Doctor story actually is The Chase, but Ian and Barbara are my favorite First Doctor companions. So I would let's see, I would well, what was it? Snog, marry, or avoid?
Yeah, it's in that
order. I can't believe
you
got an American Southern hick to say the word snog. I would snog Susan, marry Barbara, and avoid Ian, so in an attempt to like be the top man in Barbara's life.
Right, gotcha. What about you, Hugh?
So I rather, as has been said about Susan, I'd avoid her. I snog Ian and marry Barbara. And can I just say, I think that the show would not have been anywhere near as good without those two, who sell it extraordinarily. I think Doctor Who was very lucky to have them.
I didn't like to see them go when they left, and they did that montage at the end, like all those photos of them. I thought that was a pretty cool tribute, but I hated to see those go. Those are two of my favorite companions.
Whenever you think of what they were stepping into, which was the complete unknown, both in terms of the story and in terms of what the show was, and they take it absolutely seriously. That's why, in my opinion, An Unearthly Child, the first episode, is the best piece of television ever made.
Yep, and I've got that slide as well, and I know that first scene and everything. And when we talk about, for example, our age, we talk about Logopolis and the Fourth Doctor changing, and it's a major moment as a kid when your Doctor changes and all the rest of it, or Liz Sladen leaves. You can get my age. But I get your point that when Barbara and Ian left, although I wasn't alive then, when I look at the episodes, I'm thinking, well, how big a deal was that? As a fan, as a kid, because they were a safe pair of hands. They were teachers after all, and they weren't 19 or 20. They were middle-aged teachers, a safe pair of hands. They always kept the Doctor right, didn't they? And that would have been a hell of a moment. I can see what you're saying. Michelle, where would you go with it?
Avoid Susan, because teenagers are just annoying, even if they are from outer space. I would snog Barbara, marry Ian.
Right, that's clear. John?
Poor Susan's getting avoided by everybody, but that may be because she's pretty nifty with a pair of scissors. You have to look out for that. So yes, I would avoid her too. Although she's looking rather sultry in that. That's not a very Susan-like dress or pose. So she's looking a bit sultry in that, but does nothing for me, obviously. I would snog Mr. Chesterton, absolutely. Very handsome, very dapper man. And I would marry Barbara because I'm sure she'd keep me, if not necessarily on the straight and narrow, certainly on the narrow.
By the way,
I'm pretty sure I've got that tie. I've certainly got a version of it.
Is that one? It bottoms off. It's a flat edge. Yeah.
It's flat end. And I've got at least 3 different versions of ties of that colouring and striping around that area.
Well, we were discussing recently, and Hugh joined in. He had a berry on last time, so basically, I think he's going to do the cosplay. Hugh, now he's going to have the ties and everything.
I have to confess here that I have about 250 ties that I'm about to take to an auction house, but I then have another 300 or so, and at peak there's probably about 650.
Gosh, well, I do like
dapper
ties.
Man.
I hate to add, the vast majority of those are more of that era than anything else. So I bought early 60s ties.
Right, now, before I ask Cinnamon, and then I've completed the round, can I ask a quick question to everybody? Just join in, free for all. We were talking about the new series. Susan Twist, people have said, is Susan coming back? Isn't it about time Susan came back? Now, we've talked about the original TARDIS crew. Ian kind of came back for a second in Power of the Doctor. Barbara, sadly, is no longer with us, and was a different character in Meglos, never quite the same. I wanted her back. Would you have Susan back?
I would, absolutely. I'm very surprised that it didn't happen. And maybe will be still to happen. Because there could have been a Tales of the TARDIS with Susan in it. So the fact that there wasn't tends to make you think that maybe there are plans for Susan. There seems to be a theme of family and foundling running through this new season, which would relate directly perhaps to the Doctor's lineage as well. So Caroline Ford appears to be very friendly with Russell Davies. He writes very fondly of all those previous companions in the Doctor Who magazine. It's just landed on our doorstep. So yeah, I would like to think, I don't think it's as obvious as Susan Twist. And I think if they do bring Susan back, then I think very much there's no point in doing it unless you get Caroline Ford to play it. They may choose to regenerate her or do what they like with it at the end. They may well do that. But yeah, I think as a final nod to the 60th, which never really was a 60th, yeah, I would like to see a nod to that very first episode, that very first excellent episode, the best episode of television Hugh's right ever, and bring Susan back. Yep.
And while you can,
not with scissors.
No, as Dada DeBesa says, you never know Mrs. Flood could be Susan, and I've heard this mentioned.
I don't want that, no.
But that would go against. Yeah, that would go against what John's saying, because while we've got the actual originals still going. Please have them on. There's a beauty to it. There's a lovely, it's lovely poetry. So Cinnamon, I haven't asked you. I'm sorry, Brandon. I'll just ask Cinnamon about his choices and then come back to you, Brandon.
Well, for Snog, marry, avoid. Well, it's a tricky one because with Susan, she's 15, so I feel a bit uncomfortable with that. So probably avoid her anyway. I'd Snog Ian. You know, he seems like a good laugh. You know, we could have a few drinks at a party, and I can imagine us doing it for a day. And Barbara, she strikes me as a competent, you know, strong woman. So and you know, someone who can keep me on my toes. I got a lot of time for Barbara, so yeah, I'd marry her.
Okay, interesting. Now, one more before we move on, because we're comparing TARDIS crews. It's very important. So there's one more coming later on, so nobody slag me off. But here we go. Now, this hits a lot of people here, so. And it's not me in the middle, no. So basically,
you should have taken your head and put it on there.
You should put you there.
Yeah, that would have been great. Take that picture and put your head right there on Adric's head.
I can't have the panel saying which one they'll marry out of me. No. So, so basically, well, I think we know them pretty well.
Well, if they ever bring back Adric back, they know who to play. They know who to get.
They do. I'm available. So let's start the other reverse way. Cinnamon, Snog, marry, avoid.
Oh well, avoid Brendan. Can't be doing with that. I couldn't. Oh God, I'd Snog. How can I forget her name? Goodness me, what is going on with me? Janet Fielding character. Tegan, how on earth did I forget that?
Tegan and
Goodness knows. But Tegan, yeah, she'd be too much. She just nag at me constantly. She'd probably have a go at me for being English. So I'd probably snog her once, be done with her. I've always had a lot of time for Nyssa. I've always thought she was very different. You know, she's always Peter's always said she was one of his favorite companions. She's pretty, she's smart, she's intelligent, she's competent. Everything I like in a woman. So I'd marry her.
Okay, I tell you, it's very revealing. This you obviously like a strong woman, do you, Cinnamon? That's what you seem to say. So John with a H.
Was that me?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Okay. Right. I would avoid Tegan. I would avoid Tegan because I think we spend most of the time arguing. We'll get there eventually. I would marry Nyssa. Because I think, again, she'd keep me on the narrow, if not the straight. And I would, wait for it, I would snog Adric. And the reason I would do that, because while I'm snogging him, he can't speak.
Good point.
Well, when we meet, I'm gonna cosplay. There you go. That'll challenge you,
I
John.
would say gag him, but I don't know if that would euphemism or anything like that, you know.
I'll take the for a team and tongue wrestle with Adric.
Michelle, where would you go? Because this is your era, isn't it? You love the Peter Davison era.
Yeah, I do. Because it kind of reminds me of being a manager. Sometimes you want to kill them, but you also love them to death. At the same time. And sometimes at the same moment. For me, Adric, I would avoid, again, as I said earlier, teenagers, no matter what age, are annoying, or from what galaxy, are annoying. I would snog Tegan. She's and then I like Nyssa. I would marry Nyssa. I have a soft spot for Nyssa. Again, she's smart, she's competent. She's not afraid to pull a gun on somebody to defend the doctor, so she's good to have in the fight.
Right.
She's already down to her underwear.
Well, yes, she's ready.
That's why I like Terminus.
I'll go as fast as I can. Hugh.
Yeah, so I think I'd avoid. I think I'm very like John, so I'd avoid Tegan because it would nip my head. I'd snog Adric because it's fine, and I think I'm with everyone else. I'd marry Nyssa. I've liked Sarah Sutton since she was in a program in the early 70s, which was a portmanteau program where she was a 11-year-old girl who went out robbing at night.
Has she murdered? She not murdered someone?
It's not uncanny. There were murders, so it was boys and girls come out to play. It's the name of the actual episode.
I remember
the thing plays.
I remember when she played a character that was blind. I remember that. Was it Moon?
That was the Moon Stallion.
Moon Stallion.
Yeah.
With David Haig.
Yeah. Okay, Brandon. Sorry, I interrupted you earlier. So if you wanted to add what you were going to say earlier, but yeah, what was your choice?
I was just agreeing with y'all, saying I would very much like for them to bring a new story and then bring Ian in where he's on there more than just a few seconds, and then maybe bring in Carol Ann Ford and Regenerator at the end or something. But that would be awesome. I would snog Nyssa, marry Tegan because I've always thought Australians are hot, and then of course I'm going to avoid Adric all the way down to the planet.
So when people say I look like Adric, what you're all saying is you'd rather avoid me. It's all coming.
I like you much better than Adric.
Snogging you.
I'm snogging you. Don't forget that.
Oh yeah, one wants to tongue wrestle you.
Just hope that Adric hasn't had too much fear between sets and is being sick at the same time, though, John.
Oh, John, where would you go with this one?
Bark behind a tree.
Okay, so I would snog Tegan, avoid Adric, and I'd marry Nyssa so that I could snog her on a daily basis. So yeah, that would be my take.
Man, that looks like that's the face of a kid who could annoy the hell out of a TARDIS crew right there.
He's just been sick down the Sontaran, and that's why he's getting stranded.
So you can imagine if you had me in yellow with a blue star. Do you reckon? Do you think?
That's close.
Do you reckon this sliding doors moment, Tegan would have been nicer to me? Maybe.
Yeah, your badge of mathematical excellence.
Yeah,
Yeah.
English. Yeah,
And remind everybody.
We're the jerk and said that it was her fault that she got possessed by the Mara. I mean, it's like. But the funny part is, I have had to shoo staff out like the doctor does in that episode in the Visitation. I've had that talk of, why did you do that? Don't push the silent alarm. You know that just because you see a button doesn't mean you push it.
Yep, had that happen training somebody working in a bank one time. It was a mess.
So listen, I relate to the manager of, why did we do this? And no, we're not going to do this again.
So, who, Robin? Your choice again, was it?
Okay, so I'm avoiding Brandon's long lost twin brother. Sorry, I don't like Adric. I find him whiny. I find him annoying. Honestly, I think I might have been one of the people who cheered when he died in Earthshock. Yes, finally, he's gone. Yeah. I'd snog Tegan. Technically, it's the same as everyone else. I'd marry Nissa.
It is interesting, and this is the Peter Davison idea. I think he thought that the Nissa characters, I mean, she was pretty and everything, she just fitted more. Tegan was challenging, so of course, as people have said in the thread, if you snog her, she's silent. Then,
yeah, Tegan was always more aggressive. Nissa was more sweet.
Yeah, so. That's one of the things. Now, just to kind of, this is our fast way of actually discovering where you stand on why you like who and all the rest of it. We've had 2 TARDIS crews. Now, here's another challenge. Okay, giving me a moment. What the hell is on? What is going on with me tonight? I like my graphics. Right. So my question is, we're discussing every Doctor there's ever been, including Ncuti, the actor we're talking about. And my idea came from Colin Baker being in the jungle. And of course, on the last night, they normally have when there's only 3 of them left, they have a nice long discussion and get to know each other an awful lot more. Who would you like to be in the jungle on that nice last night with, to have a chat and get to know and ask questions and bond with them? Which Doctor Who actor who played the lead role? So I'll just get my slide ready, but you get the gist of it. So basically, there's all our choices. There they all are. I've not added fugitives and war doctors or Peter Cushings. I've gone for the ones in the television series who had their own era. So basically, your choices, please, you can do a free-for-all. I mean, while you're thinking, I have to say, I want to meet William Hartnell. That's who I'd want to know. I don't want to listen to all the stories about him. I want to meet him myself. And to be honest, Hugh, you mentioned in what you sent to me, Vincent and the Doctor. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm guessing, and obviously you can tell me why you've picked that, but the beautiful thing about Vincent and the Doctor was that moment at the end when Vincent heard how people rated him, because he never knew that in his life. And that was that. I mean, it's nonsense, isn't it? But it's a beautiful Doctor Who moment that only Doctor Who could do. And I did find that very emotional, and it was very raw. Now, William Hartnell, I would love to see, and I'd almost like the same to happen to him. I'd love William Hartnell to know how massive this thing became.
Yeah.
You know, I'd love to talk to him. So anyway, that's my quick choice. I won't go into details. So who wants to kind of join in on who they would love a long chat with from the Doctor Who lead role? John?
So I'll go first then if we're
okay.
struggling. I'll pick Matt Smith. In terms of that, some of the stuff that he's done recently, I've been really interested in. Some of the stuff that he's talked about, I think he's a really interesting character. I have seen him a couple of times in real life, but not to chat to, although I have asked him a question.
Yeah.
I think, you know, it's one of the things is, obviously I could say Patrick Troughton because I think that's the bedrock of my Doctor Who, but I think Matt Smith's attempt to bring Patrick Troughton back in his own character, and I'm fascinated by that. So I just think it would be, from what I know about him and what he talks about just now, I think it'd be a fascinating time to talk about stuff and how he sees it going forward and what he did when he was on it. He's my favourite Doctor of modern Who.
Now, I'm trying not to just join every link up with more blather from me. All I'll say is Melanie says McCartney, Cybermat said Peter Capaldi. Everyone's got their own Doctor. John with a H, where were you going to go with it?
John with H. For me, it would always has to be Baker T. Tom. I just think to be properly entertained, you know, with the wit and wisdom of Tom Baker would be a treat indeed. I did meet him once when I was a child, and there's a long story to this, but I fainted. There you go. Such was he offered me a jelly baby, and that was all too much for my 13-year-old self.
Oh,
and I passed out. So I would like to apologise for passing it in front of him, first of all. And then I just think, you know, having read Tom Baker's autobiography, his memoir.
Yeah, it's really great.
Oh, yeah. Just fascinating stories. You know, some you couldn't repeat in front of your mother, and others that are just absolutely spellbinding. And the good thing about Tom is that when he's missing a story, he'll just make one up or embellish one. And that's just fantastic. I think you're always getting a performance with him. So I've had one night with one Doctor, knowing that no matter what's going on, he'll always be the fourth Doctor, because the fourth Doctor is Tom Baker, and Tom Baker is the fourth Doctor. You're just on to a good night, no matter what. And I think there probably would have to be a slight libation involved as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, we've all heard the stories when Tom Baker said he popped into somebody's house and sat watching Doctor Who, and the kids were sat there. Can you imagine that? Like you said, John, Tom Baker and the Fourth Doctor are almost the same thing.
Well, they are. It's funny. He played himself. He admits that's why he still says, I never stopped being Doctor Who, because that's who I am.
Yeah. Anybody else want to join in on their choice?
Oh, tricky one. It really is tricky, because it's you know, I've met a few of them, and it's you could easily pick out a lot of them and just say like, oh, I'd love an hour with you. But I was going to go for, I guess, the simple answer of say, oh yeah, David, because he's my Doctor. But yeah, I think I'm going to have to agree with John with a H. Tom Baker, yeah, he's always struck me. He seems like he's in character. Like you never know. Yeah, you know, we talk about performances. It always seems like he's putting on a show, even whether it's being seen in a coffee shop. You know, he strikes me as a remarkable person, and perhaps a complicated person. You know, I've always grown up to respect my elders, and I find the stories of people who have come before me always very fascinating. So I'd always love to hear about what sort of life he's led and how he's came to be who he is and where he's got himself in life.
Yeah. That's why Crimpling in the margin, I always say the margin, in the thread has talked about John Pertwee. And John Pertwee's autobiography I love too, Moon Boots and Dinner Suits. I
always love that the bit where he goes, I went to, beating off school. The Americans will get that.
So, yeah, exactly. So, Brandon, where would you go with your choice of who? It's a long night in the jungle. And like John said, there may be drink involved.
Definitely. John's right. John with a H, I think so. Yes, with an H.
No, I don't say that.
It's crazy. It's two Johns and there's two Brandons. So there's you and me, and then there's two Johns.
When we had two Johns on a certain other show, John with a H used to say he was the good-looking one, didn't you?
I didn't say. I knew I was.
Yeah. I've used Nivea since then, John.
Come on, an H for handsome John. I say John without an H. Sorry about that, but thanks for that.
I would definitely. I would if I had my druthers, I would get to pick a classic and a new. But if I had to pick overall, definitely Tom Baker. He's super he's magnetic. His personality is really magnetic, and I think he would be a really cool person to just sit and talk to. And after reading that book, I want to say it was called "Who Is Tom Baker?" I think was the name of the autobiography. And if you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. You can get a used copy on eBay. And but definitely him. But now Nuhu, I'd like to sit and talk to Capaldi. Definitely. I feel like I would get along with him, and I feel like I could sit and talk to him forever, probably.
Because he's passionate, isn't he? He's a passionate fan, and everything.
And you notice he has the two. Like, I mean, I feel like maybe he didn't get to go as hard or as good with the writing sometimes, but Capaldi's like one of the greatest actors to ever play the role.
Yes, probably the best.
So, who wants to go next then with their choices? Yeah.
Well, I've met David Tennant, so I've met him. I would love to meet Peter Capaldi and Peter Davison, but the one I think go have a conversation with and is Patrick Troughton. Again, like William Hartnell, there's a lot of stories about them. Some of them not really flattering, but there's a lot about Patrick. It is fascinating. He also, because he was, very shy in real life about his role. Why did he advise Peter Davison to only do 3 years? Why does he think 3 is the perfect number? There's a lot about for staying in the role, a lot about him and his take on the character that he didn't really discuss publicly.
Yeah, I mean, he intrigued me at Longleat. He was the one who intrigued me the most as a young teenager. Peter Davison was the Doctor of the time, interested. John Pertwee, great showman, and he was my original Doctor. But Patrick Troughton was fascinating to listen to.
He probably is the most enigmatic of the actors.
He's probably
very little about him, and even now, by virtue of his two acting sons, we're getting to know more. But I love the story that Fraser Hines talks about when they used to leave the Doctor Who's rehearsals at studios.
Yeah,
Patrick Troughton,
family or something.
Envelopes with money in it to various different families that he had across the city.
Yeah.
Because he was quite a prolific lover, apparently.
And that could have also kind of contributed to his death, if you believe some of the stories.
Yes, I'd heard that story too, Michelle. Yeah,
and I've heard that the one woman involved still really feels really bad about it.
Apparently, he went with a smile on his face.
Hey, at least he went happy.
Well, so I'm trying to see who's left. Honestly, give us a free for all if anyone's not said their shared theirs.
I'll just agree with John with an H. Handsome John. And I would say it's got to be Tom, because I just don't think I would get bored through that stay in the jungle. He'd always have something to say. So it's Tom all the way, isn't it?
I know. I'm jealous of anybody. I'll put the photograph up just to say I had a day when I had a chance to talk to Colin Baker. He's not my favorite. I didn't say that at the time, of course, but it was great time. Well, while we were looking after him behind the scenes, me and Jamie had little chances just to have a chat with him. And, I think that's what I'm talking about with the Jungle Day. It's just interesting to just chat about normal stuff, actually. And he's interesting, a decent bloke. And he had loads of stories about, the industry and what he actually really, truly thought. And actually, he blooming trusted me with his money, which was amazing because I took his money all day and counted it. So anyway, I think they're all great people, I have to say. And I will include Jodie Whittaker is an actress who's been in many dramas. Shooty is a live wire, quite clearly. And I think he'd be a good laugh. He'd be a good night out.
Oh,
yeah.
But yeah.
I was very close to saying him, but...
Yeah.
I was close to saying Paul McGann, who again has had a fascinating career. And sort of going back to whenever he was the monocled mutineer. If people haven't seen that, it's worth seeking out in terms of a dramatisation of what happened in the First World War, and was hugely political. But and again, a fascinating family there in terms of his brothers and what they've done.
Yeah. Now, I've got a question for you all, which is, while we're talking about loving Doctor Who and you've got to tell me what your best era is. And I'll pin it down to a season first. The best season of Doctor Who. And I know we won't agree, but that's allowed because we're all different ages and all the rest of it. But just tell me the season, maybe the story that sums up that season, and tell me the reason why. So the best season of Doctor Who over the 60 years. Thread join in as well. Who would like to start on that one, Michelle?
Okay, I'll go season 21 and the Case of Vanderzani. One of the best episodes ever. It just kind of is lightning captured in a bottle.
Cool. Well, yeah, I'm not going to say a word. Brandon?
Which one?
I think that's hard. Now, I guess if I had to absolutely pick, one of my favorite classic Who episodes is Vengeance on Varos. But if I'm picking, like, if I have to just sit and only have one classic season, it's probably going to be Baker's first 12.
Yeah,
because you're going to get there's somewhat of a continuous thread there with the places they're jumping around to, and then it's his first season. You get Genesis of the Dalek, stuff like that. So that would probably be my pick.
So while people are talking, I'm going to show you, obviously, I routed around various surveys, and these are just different choices of people, just to remind you where we stand on this. Some people picked a certain season, some picked a story. John, without a H, where would you like to go with your choice? Your top season?
My choice is season 14. And it's because, as I said earlier, it's got Robots of Death in it, which is just superb. And it's got a certain story set in Victorian London as well, which is just brilliant. And Tom is great in that as well. So that gets my vote. Season 14.
Oh, it's got Talons. That's in it too. It's a good season, man. Yeah,
it's great, isn't it?
And this fan here for the fourth Doctor era has got Genesis, Seeds of Doom, Talons, City of Death. But they say racism one. What a shame, isn't it? How life moves on and suddenly you've got to, I don't know, it kills your childhood sometimes. Because I cannot knock Talons of When Cheyenne, but I know what people are saying now. It's just one of those things. Hugh, where would you go? Your choice of season and story?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm sadly going to be boring here on C14 again. I don't think you can get beyond it, and screw anyone who doesn't like the Talons of Wing Ching. It's got stuff in it that might be a bit offensive, but honestly, for the time, not really that much. And the season got Robots of Death, which is my favourite one. So I can't really see beyond that.
John with a H?
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to be boring. It was always going to be 13 or 14, but it has to be 14 because 14 contains my all-time favourite Doctor Who story, which is The Deadly Assassin. It also contains The Robots of Death, Talons of Wing Cheyenne. Oh, crikey. It
Mandragora.
The best companion, one of the best companions ever. So it's got Sarah Jane, what's not to like. It's got Louise Jameson absolutely shooting it out of the park as Leela before Graham Williams had trashed the character ever so slightly. And it also does something very, very brave. It has a companionless story as well.
Yeah.
And it all works so well. This was a team at the top of their game. And I don't think, I'll hazard a guess, I don't think that will ever be topped. Ever.
Yeah. I think the thing is, I really like season 1, New Who. It's got a lot of really good stuff in it, but again, it's about just trying stuff. And that Deadly Assassin is extraordinary.
Yeah,
always been my favorite. I've never changed, never wavered. It's always been the top of the list from the very moment I watched. It's always been controversial in Doctor Who circles, Deadly Assassin. But again, as Hugh says, this is a production team trying new things, different genres within the genre. And if you think during that season you have classic Holmes type mystery. You've got an Agatha Christie. You've got a pastiche of the Mercurian Candidate. You've got the Hand of Orlac pastiche as well, and you've also got Renaissance Italy in the Mask of Mandrake.
Yeah.
Just fabulous. You know what I mean? What's not to like?
And what's good is you mentioned season 1 of the Chris Eccleston, etc. As a panel discussing since that, you can see the formula that some of the producers suddenly now think we have to have one in space, one history, then we do this, then we do that. And actually, when we talk about season 14, there wasn't a formula. They just decided to do some very good stories. And yes, Tom Baker would like, since Liz Sladen left, to have had no companions forever, but Deadly Assassin was good enough. And that story, as John says, Matrix was invented in that story. The Matrix is now the go-to, even for Chibnall. You know, it was fascinating.
He's a hack.
Want to bring a dead character back? Use the Matrix. Yeah, they do it in the comics and the books. Yeah.
And I thought the Matrix was best there. And since John's mentioned it, please have a look at our show from the other day. Oh yes, that's good for that'll keep your heart ticking over. That one, yes.
Where's the Master's Staser when you need it?
Can I open my eyes yet?
Drink him down.
You can.
Yeah, thank you.
So, I'm trying to. I can't. It's such a big panel. I can't remember if anyone hasn't shared their turn regarding season. Go on, Robin.
Okay, so I just backtracked because I didn't answer about the jungle date thing with the Doctor either. I kind of got skip there. I'm actually going to be controversial here. I'm going to say Colin Baker. If I was if I was to do a jungle date with Colin Baker, because I feel like he had a lot of ideas of what he wanted his Doctor to be, but John Nathan Turner just fucked him over.
Yeah.
So I'd be interested to have a conversation with Colin Baker to find out how he wanted to do his Doctor, what the problems were behind the scenes, and just how he felt being like fired from the show when it wasn't even his fault.
Yeah, well, that's fascinating. Yeah, no, that's a good conversation to have, and you've got some interesting. I mean, he had a marriage with Liza Goddard, who was in Terminus, who also apparently knew Michael Grade. It's fascinating, a period, I have to say. I don't know how much he'd share with me. Okay. I joked with him when I saw him last year. I joked with him about Liza Goddard being in Give Us a Clue with him and somebody else. And, you know, he's a decent gentleman. But, it's fascinating what you could talk to him about. Yeah. So, favourite season era story?
Series 4, as for the story, Star on Earth Journey's End.
Yeah.
Just the way it brings all those three shows together, Torture, the Sarah Jane Adventures, Doctor Who. Just like this epic. Like, it is just like Jane, one of the best parts of New Who. It's like the best Russell T Davies era story.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
Best finale. Just everything's on point. Everyone's fabulous in it. Julian Bleach's Davros, what's not to like?
Can I ask Brandon a question about that? Brandon, sorry, can I ask? Forgive me, it's not Brandon. Forgive me, Robin. Can I ask you a question about that?
Oh yeah, I'm easily confused.
Given the fact, Robin, that you love that so much, and it ends beautifully with the Catherine Tate having the mid crisis, whatever it's called. Did you feel that Russell Davies trashed that by going back and doing what he did with the Donna character in the 60s? Has that spoiled it for you in any way?
I don't think so. No, to be quite honest, I'm easily accepting of things, to be quite honest. So it didn't really bother me too much. Besides, I love
people were upset because they thought that was a perfect ending for that character.
See, for me, I was similar with that with Rose at the end of Doomsday.
Yes,
I didn't like him going back and bringing her back. I thought that was the perfect ending for it, and it kind of felt a bit flat when she came and went again. So
I don't like Rose at all. So
Sorry, just forgive me for
it is interesting. I mean, I know it's never go back in many ways. Although Sarah Jane coming back was done well. And not in K9. I'm one of those. I didn't like K9 and Company. I didn't think it set it up right. It didn't.
Don't think anyone did, to be honest.
Yeah. But no, Russell Davies and Toby Whitehouse did a good job with the return of Sarah Jane. And it is a rule, isn't it? In life, don't return. It's dangerous. And in some ways, I feel sorry for Catherine Tate and David Tennant in the way they've come back. They've come back to help the show, but I don't know. I think, like John's hinting at it, was it spoiled by muddying the plot a bit and all the rest of it when it was a hell of a climax? I found that very sad.
It's so poignant. It really was. And I feel it's been when you go back and watch that now, and that's the reason I was asking Robin to rewatch that now, in the knowledge that wasn't the final end for the character. I mean, they did bring it back briefly in the end of time, but it was a fleeting blink and you'd miss it type appearance, and it didn't touch what had happened at the end of series 4, but this very much did. And I think on a rewatch of this now, you have the knowledge of they undone that, and they undone
I know what you mean.
For a very good reason.
It's similar to Jamie, isn't it? You know, the whole wiping of memory, and you know, again, when I watched it, And it has shock value. I mean, it is quite hard. I mean, I suppose that obviously that's the point, isn't it? It's the sad ending that they've done so much. But if you look past the fact that it's traumatizing, but as a story, I kind of feel like it's a bit bizarre to have someone have all that journey and have a small part of Donna's character, of her, because she was always she never felt like she was good enough, and she's always been put down by her mother. So I always felt like to have all that character work undone and to have like her impact so many people and all the thing about Pompeii and stuff, and she did so much, and then to have all that just unwritten, it's a bit bizarre. As a writing thing, I don't want to see that happen again because you've done it twice now.
Dramatic purpose behind that is that she was completely undervalued as a human being. She undervalued herself. She absolutely didn't rate herself. She was just the temp from Chiswick. And I think, as the Doctor says to Will, she has no idea. She saved people, she saved civilizations. She will never know what a force she was. And I think that dramatically was a perfect end to that character.
Yeah.
I know, it's interesting. I think that sort of like the arc from doing Turn Left into that is brilliant as well. Because Turn Left's great episodes on
God, it is.
Of what it does, and it foreshadows that by taking the Doctor out of it, but then the Doctor is taken out of her life, and she's taken out of her life as well. So I think it's a brilliant finish.
And to be honest, why did we get so bothered about it? It was interesting you mentioned that Jamie McCrimmon and Zoe getting their memories taken as well.
That's what I was just sitting here thinking.
Yeah, the sadness. It's dementia. It's Alzheimer's. It's a horrible message that somebody who's lived a life, who has some great memories, that, as John was saying, would makes them have some self belief at last. To wipe their memories, we all know in real life is one of the cruelest things you can do. And to see that happen to a character who's suddenly discovered life and vitality, it was just too much to watch for a program. And once you've dealt with it, to then start playing with it, I don't know. But we're passionate about Doctor.
It's done now. He's done it now. It's done. We can't. Yeah. We can't. It was nice to see them all back again. Obviously, it was, but
although
that was the price.
As we were saying earlier, different universe, possibly.
Well, since we're on the topic of it, I'll probably say favorite seasons and that. I'll probably say Series 4 is probably one of my favorites. There's a few contenders there. I really, really like season 18, 19. Those are kind of a lot of the first sort of seasons that I was introduced on. Season 16 as well, I've got a soft spot for. But with Series 4 of the new era, I always liked how it felt like it matured. If you were a child and you were 8 years old when, you were. If you were 8 years old when Series 1 came out, you'd probably be about 11, maybe 12. By the time Series 4 probably had finished, maybe by the time the Tennant era was over, the 2009 special. So I always felt like it got darker or more grown up. Of course, if you look past the farting aliens of Series 1, it just in just its tone of the stories, it got deeper. Like especially episodes like Turn Left, it felt like it grew up. And I think that was a smart choice by the production team at the time to make it feel like, to stop any potential kids from maybe growing out of the show. It kept them in, and it felt like it got darker in the tone of the stories. Silence in the Library, very quite mature, I think. Turn Left, especially, very, very mature in a lot of its themes. Especially with everyone put in labour camps. There's a lot of serious adult themes there you would miss as a kid.
Yeah.
So I always liked that about Series 4, that it felt like it matured, and it gave a lot of. It's very dark, episodes like Midnight as well, and of course I like to include the specials in Series 4 because they're like an epilogue, they're like a little bit extra, not quite Series 5 of course, but they're not quite. I don't like to say that it's on its own. So you got episodes like Waters of Mars as well, which is a great analysis and character sort of study of the Doctor, and the contradictions of pulling him in different directions of what he wants, but what he can't, what he wants to do, but what he can't do. Some really great themes in Series 4, so I'd say it's one of my favourites. And even just apart from the themes, just in general stories, some good fun adventures in that one.
I think it's definitely Russell Davis's best series. And I like series 1 as a whole, but the fact that his writing in it, I think, is better than anywhere else, because he does do Midlight and Turn Left, which I think are two of the best episodes ever written.
Although, strangely enough, season 4 also contains one of my worst ever Doctor Who stories, The Doctor's Daughter, which is just dreadful.
I will agree there.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. Right, let me just throw a few things in before we depart, because I've got to be fair. We've got to cover 60 years. So, of course, part of that Snog, Marry, Avoid, here, let's update it with these three.
Damn it.
So, yeah, I've got to be fair. There'll be somebody noticing that I haven't picked something from the Jodie era. And, of course, we had the 3. So if we just rattle around, if anybody wants to join in, we don't have to...
the jungle contention, that was enough.
I mean... Obviously, I know everybody's going to pick Yaz, because if I look at Twitter, everybody picks Yaz. So I think it's obviously predictable, isn't it? Obviously, of my age, it would have to be...
Mixer from what? Shooting?
I mean, Graham is a funny bloke, and he seemed quite normal to me. Ryan, lovely lad, but obviously, age-wise, maybe just a snog. And obviously, Yaz, I'd avoid, because she didn't do a job. She wouldn't be earning any money. She wouldn't be able to help pay the mortgage, because she never did that police work. She was always, and she looks like she seems a bit of a stalker to me. Very possessive about the 13th Doctor, I thought.
I mean, I always quite liked how in Series 7 you had that dynamic of Amy and Rory trying to keep up their public appearances. The scenes in there with Rory, where he's talking to a nurse and he's like, why, you never hear most days, what's going on? Those little scenes that like make you remember, like, oh yeah, he is a nurse. Whereas with, Yaz and, she never had those scenes, it was mentioned once or maybe twice again with that one where she was depressed and sat in a field.
As you do.
It was mentioned once and it was never again. Whereas, like I say, in Series 7, it was a repeated theme, of how these characters' lives affect the people that they know. It was a big kind of small plot point of that season.
Walks in and Rory's in his underwear. Yeah, that was great.
Or sucking his thumb. I mean, we've got Matthew Pounder, who's making his own rules up. How dare he? Avoid all of them. But yeah, I know. Does anyone have a strong opinion?
I'll just stand in one place, and presumably Ryan will avoid me by his dyspraxia. Oh, look, I've remembered it whenever Chibnall forgot. I quite like Yaz. I think it gets a bit overwritten at times. So I'd probably snog Yaz and marry Graham, because he seems like a nice chap.
Yeah,
I would Romana, Yaz, and Ryan, and I like Graham. And
just before anyone pipes in, that's just my problem. The TARDIS crew of 63, I really like them. The TARDIS crew of 82, I really like them. And I had a problem with the 3 here. 3 is a dangerous number anyway. I think they've got to be very careful in Doctor Who to have 3 in the TARDIS. But I had more problems with this one. But anyway, anyone else got an opinion on it?
I can agree absolutely with Matthew. I would avoid them all. And the reason why I would avoid them all, because I don't know anything about these people. Nothing about them. They were on our screens for 2 and 3 years, respectively. Yaz at the end there. But I don't want to snog, marry, and avoid them, because I can't snog or marry them because I don't know them. And the reason why I don't know them is because they were written by a hack.
Do you know
I agree with that 100%.
I think that's why Chris Chibnall had you stuck in a time eddy like William Hartnell for ages, John. That's what's happened there. He sabotaged your arrival.
Yeah, he doesn't want me revealing the fact that he's a hack. I may have mentioned that in passing.
Once or twice. For those who are watching at home, for the last episode, he said it 22 times.
Yeah.
Okay, I was wondering. You need to put in a counter. Yeah.
It's every stream.
He said it 22 times, and Brendan said it 5 times. So far tonight, people, it's been 3 times.
I don't like odd numbers. He's a hack. There you go.
Okay,
He's going to get his own BBC Two show because we used to joke BBC Two does repeats, but and so John might end up with his own show at this rate.
It's mandatory.
it calls He's a Hack with John.
Right, quick question, because we're Doctor Who fans. Quick question here. Join in if you wish. Your favourite TARDIS interior?
Oh,
that's easy.
If I just said Hugh, for example, was mentioned in the very first episode, the policeman in the fog going into Totter's Lane and the scrapyard for the foremans, and that the humming of the TARDIS, and then that moment that takeoff, that phenomenal takeoff. So my question is, and I'm sure as Whovians you want to join in, what is your favourite TARDIS interior?
Season 14 wooden interior.
Yep.
Good choice.
The spare room or extra, what did they call it? It was like an extra console room. Secondary, yeah. That's my favorite too, man.
Yeah, it's
and
great.
it contained a fully shut and the recorder.
Did
you
shaving mirror as well at one point, didn't it?
Yes. Can I ask you all a controversial question? Because this is a popular one, and it's popular. I wonder if it was only in it briefly and we miss it. I love the difference, but do you think if we saw it year in, year out, I don't know. Did you think it was limited?
Its novelty might wear off without adding a little and tweaking it some, I guess.
Yeah,
you may have a point there. Way to make me doubt myself, Brendan.
Yeah.
I know.
I know I've spoken to a lot of people and they say that they really miss the time rotor on the console.
Yeah.
That's one of the things they miss. But I remember first seeing this and I was so happy with it. And for me, it's a shame we didn't get to see more of it.
Yeah, that's the reason why it was designed to lose the time rotor, because it took so much time getting it fixed in the studio that Philip Hinchcliffe decided that we needed something that wasn't going to take not only so much time up, but so much space up in the studio as well. And I think this was like an IKEA TARDIS. It was self-assembly,
But I used to love
quickly.
In An Adventure in Time and Space, and we had that lovely moment with William Hartnell's Doctor who knows how to work it underneath and the directors didn't. And that's true, isn't it? That he started to know. I mean, I love all that, and it's a good call to say it's missing the time rotor, because I like a bit of time rotor action. We've got in the thread McGann's TARDIS. I'm amazed nobody shouted that out yet.
Well, I'd probably say either McGann's or the coral one of Tennant era is, or the RTD era is a strong one, but that McGann TARDIS is, it's probably the most lived in. It's the most homely. It was a fantastic design, and I think they really nailed it. The TV movie didn't get everything right, but it certainly got this right. And you'd look at something like this and you think, wow, they really did their research. And it's just a big crying shame that we never. I mean, look at those candles. It looks like the Christmas ceremony there. I just wish we saw more of it.
To me, with all those candles, I think of 1970s power cuts, to be honest. But I find it funny that in the thread, people are saying this is the cozy one, and you've mentioned this is a cozy one. It's vast. How is that cozy? I know he had a little carpet in the corner. He was reading the Time Machine. He had a cup of tea.
It's lived in. It's lived in. There's books everywhere. There's a nice chair. There's a recorder. His cup of tea's on tap.
Nice,
it's big, but I can imagine. There's a swimming pool in there somewhere. Maybe a nice big cinema. It feels lived in. And if you listen to certain Big Finish audios, especially the one where he has Susan around and his grandson, great grandson, around for tea for Christmas, that story really, accentuates that feeling.
I do agree with Cinnamon. Well, I think this is probably the first TARDIS interior where you get to see kind of what Tom said, where it should be a whole world inside of it. And you've got the cloister room, which is massive, and you've got you're seeing other worlds through the TARDIS interior. That's great, but I'm still sticking with season 14.
It's interesting.
Even the bats and everything that fly around in it,
Yeah.
What about Raymond Williams saying here, season 19, we had the zero room, we had bedrooms. Was it too domestic?
No, I was at season 19 is roughly the same console room as season 18. And I was going to choose season 18 as my favorite console room because And also the season 18 exterior TARDIS is my favourite too, with the stacked roof. I just really thought the TARDIS had begun to look a little bit tatty and shoddy during the Williams era for whatever reason. And Jonathan Turner gave it a refresh. He put those 2 little slats in the middle there in to make it look bigger. And you got, for the first time, I think since the Hartwell opening season, you got a really expansive console room. It was the first time actually in season 18 that room became known as the console room. Up until that was called the control room or whatever. But that actually gave a sense of size and scale. And for the first time ever, for a long time rather, we also got to see beyond the console room, to see the Zero room in season 19, bedrooms in season 18, the cloister room.
Yeah, Brendan's bedroom.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So going for this one, because even the console in the middle, although it was showing its age, it had a bit of a refurb and it was lovely. Absolutely. So I'm choosing season 18.
So can I just follow that up with a question though to everybody? Look, obviously this is my era. I loved this, and I would. But when I look back, didn't you think it did get a bit domestic with the bedrooms and all of it? I like the Zero room idea, but I just found the domestic bit in the shared bedroom between Tegan and Nyssa, blah blah blah.
That was all part of the whole Nathan Doctor going twice weekly and stuff like that. It became a bit more. There's a bit of a soap opera element added to it.
Very 80s.
I actually think that it was good because when we had bedrooms before, we had beds. We saw that when Caravan with scissors. So it was something that was done at the beginning. I think it was good to see that these people had lives out with that just one room. It humanized them and it just made them more real. So yeah, what's not to like in seeing Adric's bedroom in particular was a treasure trove of fan memorabilia. The wee boy, he liked his stuff, didn't he? He liked his merch.
Magazines under the bed.
Yeah. That bed looked in need of changing.
I'll vote for the original, just in terms of the fact that I think it was quite shocking at the time. And to do that again, so it's, as John's talked before, it's the benefit of not having very much money. And to just do that with the roundels and come up with something that looked alien for no money, everything's based around that again.
It's lovely to see the green there, Brendan, that colour photograph. See how green the set was. Yeah.
I know, and this is why I was torn and conflicted by the Daleks colorization because I wanted to see some of these sets in colour. I really did. Because I think it looks quality. I know when we mentioned the other day, I know the Daleks colorization. I think, Cinnamon, you said you can see almost the cardboard set in the back of the Dalek city. I understand that, but oh my God, there were some great sets in the 60s. And when you see the color pictures, you think, oh, please colorize it, please. I really would like to see that. That looks expensive to me. It still looks space age. And I agree with what Hugh said there. I mean, the size of it. And then you had the food machine and you had that little area Susan had to go behind and there were couches everywhere and all the rest of it.
You often quite forget how big the original TARDIS actually was, for its time. It felt like a real laboratory. It feels very futuristic.
Studios, so yeah.
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 And I did love
it was very adaptable. They could shrink it depending on how much it was going to be. In it. Sometimes it was just a couple of flats. Yeah.
What was the first story where I loved it? And it must have been in this era when the TARDIS doors open and you can go outside. That was the Daleks, wasn't it? I think you could still see there was the thunder and lightning.
Yes,
as a kid, I loved it when the directors were able to do that and show the outside world and the TARDIS interior. I loved that.
Didn't that also happen in An Earthly Child? I swear, the door thing also happens in that one. You see, all the sand and the rock.
Yeah, you'd think it would, wouldn't you? With it being the introduction of the TARDIS, and them seeing how it works.
You get to push open the TARDIS door. They erect the TARDIS doors just in front of the double doors. To get us. There's a recording break from the junkyard to where they do that. So you get to see them push the doors, and then the double doors lie behind. But the first time you actually see the double doors open and see the view outside is in towards the end of episode 2, is it, of the Daleks, where Susan's returned to the TARDIS and she doesn't want to stray out. And you actually get that lovely flashing thunder and lightning, which lights up the roundels as well. It's super duper. And the next time you see it is at the end of the Edge of Destruction, where the beginning of, tantalizingly, you see the snow-capped mountain in Marco Polo. But unfortunately, that's all we get to see of that.
I mean, the washing up bowls were mentioned. Yeah, but then we had this console. We had the console everywhere. Nobody has said, and I'm just going to ask it, I'm not going to milk this for what it's worth, but nobody has actually mentioned this one.
The dead spider.
It looks like a bad Lego set.
For me, it's the 12. I love the 12 Doctor set. I love that one.
That's fabulous. Yeah.
Yeah. I like
Yeah,
that one.
I would love to see the companions' rooms again. The idea that there's more than just the console room. I don't think we should ever see the Doctor's bedroom. That should always be off limits.
Oh, you're going to spoil some plots now, aren't you? No, yeah, I agree.
The problem with the Geordie TARDIS is it's, for one, it was always too dark and it felt very claustrophobic. And although, you know, we've mentioned there about the season 14 TARDIS, and although that pre is very small, it was a secondary TARDIS, wasn't it? They were seen walking about, and then they discovered it, and they thought, oh, well, you will be from here from now on. But they never really stayed there for that much longer. But this was always very dark. Every time there was always a shot. It was always up close. You never really saw much of it, and I don't know. It was never, yeah.
I never had any sense of scale of it. The whole idea of the TARDIS is you walk into this, hopefully cathedral-like, as Taylor Sticks used to describe it in the novelizations, cathedral-like space. And what they showed a total lack of understanding during this era, because they're surrounded by those crystals, which just basically shrinks the thing. So all the action's taking place in that one small space around the console. Exactly. You get no sense of scale through that. And I think also just directors during this era were sort of kiboshed in terms of the shots they could use during that. So again, it was just another example of the total lack of thought in this era.
Which is odd, because there's tons of really good-looking stuff in the Chibnall era. Sort of Flux is a good-looking series. You'd think that they try and do something, but I think it's that whole thing about not, for some reason, getting them out of the TARDIS as quickly as possible, which doesn't always work. I like the new one that you put up, Brendan.
Yeah,
I do as well. It's really big, but I like it.
Honestly, I'm torn between this one and the McGann one.
Yeah,
but this is gorgeous.
It's a little empty. I will grant that. I've had a few people say that it's a bit empty, and that is true. I think I think we should do like Shooty said and put an actual chair or a sofa in there as well as the jukebox. But I love the colours, the round things, the fact that they light up.
Like that. It's a hat stand.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's a fair point.
It just strikes me.
Where would you put it though?
Star Wars, like really.
On the door.
You know,
yeah, it's real kind of new start, like J.J. Abrams' Star Trek. That's the kind of vibe.
It's like
a very clean hospital.
It's like Brandon mentioned earlier, one of you did. I call this one the modern Hartnell because it technically is like a space age, but done modern, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's obviously referencing the first one as much as possible. But I like there is obviously space for the actors to move there. So you can actually have dramatic scenes in it very easily.
Yeah, and that console, even the console as well. Shooty looks tiny when he's messing around with the controls. And the described Shooty is very, electrifying. He's always running about, so it should be very suited to him.
It's interesting that in the thread it's kind of 50-50, wheelchair friendly, too cold and clinical, big and empty, needs a few things in. I'm sure they're going to do something. It is big. And
I think Russell did mention the set does things, but like we haven't seen them yet, but he said like it's very like
modular, maybe
intricate, I suppose.
And I do love the change in color, because one of my favorite stories was Enlightenment, when the White Guardian appeared to warn the Doctor, and you had that very dark lighting in the TARDIS, and I love that coloring. And orange lights, I think now directors have that lovely choice that they can actually change the mood in the TARDIS.
It was in Battlefield as well, wasn't it? Because for season 26, they barely used the TARDIS. It was practically falling apart at that point, so they were quite focused not to use it. And there's a scene in there where it's very dark and very sort of orangey, dimly lit.
The snag is it's a very expensive looking TARDIS, but it can't deal with a cup of coffee.
Yeah,
that's the problem.
I think that's the writing problem rather than the TARDIS's problem.
I thought it was funny.
I think they ran off the defences.
Apparently, the Type 60s have got over that. They're fine. It's the Type 40s that have the problem.
Last I heard, the Type 40 has actually been recalled. So is that going to recall this?
Yeah.
So,
Well, one of the last thoughts to get you all feeling good and nostalgic is, to be fair, I showed you 75, but would you go back to 2005, the beginning? This is when
I'm alive at this point.
You're alive at this point.
Yeah. I am 7 years old.
I am about, well, maybe just about under 2.
23.
I was born in September 2002, so how would I be?
I must admit, though, it doesn't look the most exciting schedule, though. It doesn't look...
But if you take it that, I mean, Casualty has been going on nearly as long as Doctor Who.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, that's a staple. Match of the Day was on the first one.
Yeah.
The 75 one. So some of that hasn't really changed.
I find it intriguing when you watch some of these. Some of the fixtures are still very, very similar. And just to give you an idea, and I'll do it in seconds because you might be intrigued. 1968, because, you know, I was born that year. So Tom and Jerry, Enemy of the World, Part 3. Oh, the Monkeys. D Time, that was Simon D. He was a presenter. He had a light entertainment show at that point. Dixon
I thought that took the 11th hour there.
Yeah. Dixon of Dock Green was the big cop show then.
Don't mention 7:55. He's been cancelled.
Don't mention 7:55.
And as Hugh said, look, there's Match of the Day still there.
So I remember that. I don't remember that one precisely, but I stuff like that's fairly close to what I would remember. The Monkey's been on, yes, around that time. Simon D is a really odd one because he sort of became enormously popular and then sort of disappeared. Obviously, and we have the slightly dodgy paedophile slot as well, because Jim will fix it. It might have been on 10 years later.
Yes, it's very much the paedophile slot that was.
So we got a paedophile replaced for paedophile.
and for all the Americans, I'm Googling Ralph.
I had to. The only one I know is Jimmy Savile. You know?
Yeah. So.
Let's not dwell on them. They don't deserve our attention anymore. These people.
And just before I finish off, the truth is, in Britain, it wasn't always on Saturdays, as we know. There was an experiment. And I have to say, I don't know about those people who were there at the time in '82, but Doctor Who at 7:05, good. I like that. Question of Sport was our little quiz show that was popular then. Then Dick Henry.
Which was already on in the 68 one as well, and in the 2005. I mean, that's extraordinary.
Yeah, it is fascinating to see when everyone talks about the old days, about what they liked. I mean, there's 85 for you.
Number 2.
Oh, that's classic.
Yeah, number 2's been cancelled.
Oh, superb. That's classic. Pedophile. Don't know what Laughter is. So Dynasty, Belshrak. I mean, Belshrak. And finishing off with American Werewolf in London and Joni Mitchell in concert. That's classic Saturday night.
Mm-hmm. I mean, isn't it amazing to see? I mean, you know, a bit of time travel there for you. It may have felt like a comfort blanket for you. So we've been talking tonight about our love for Doctor Who. I've tried to say where was our starting point, best season, best story, best TARDIS interior, and of course I could go on and, you know, just remind you, we're going to really let rip on Tuesday night with our first ever Sensphere review in this format. We have done the Giggle. We have done the Church on Ruby Road, but this is where we're going to do a lot of them when it isn't the new series. We're going to do a new Who versus a classic Who. Not necessarily versus, but basically comparing and pairing them up, where we look at the treatment of a character, of the Doctor, of the villain, of the monster. So it's going to be the treatment of the Sontarans, looking at their original story and their latest iteration. So please join us on Tuesday for that. That'll be very interesting because Chibnall might not be criticised as much as people think. So possibly spoilers. So thank you for your time. That was our first ever. And thanks for all joining. You all got a credit, and I'm going to finish with the credit because it took me 25. No, but basically, please join us again. The sense fee is still growing. You know, our subscribers are growing. Our panel's growing, it looks like. But we're all growing. And honestly, thank you, everybody, for tuning in tonight. Thanks to the panel for joining us. And I'm saying thanks you to you in the credits. So I'll see you on the other side in 2 minutes.
Bye-bye.